Ready? All right, we're on. Hey, good morning. Welcome to the Board of County Commissioners Agenda Setting and Work Session for April 23rd, 2019. I'm John Hutchings, Chair of the Board, and let's go around the room.
Time answer.
Thomasina Cooper, Assistant to Time Answer.
Lovely Beaumont, Clerk of the Board.
Ramiro Chavez, County Manager.
And over on the bench, we have Robin Courts, Administrator, or the County Administrator's Executive Aide Assistant, okay. And our PIO, Megan Porter. We just came from a Monarch fundraiser function, so Commissioner Edwards will be here directly. So starting off, we'll review the draft agenda for this afternoon at 2 o'clock. And there'll be a Pledge of Allegiance led by Commissioner Messer. And then approval of the agenda and the meeting minutes. Welcome, Commissioner.
Good morning.
The meeting minutes from April 16th, 2019. And then we're going to jump right into an opportunity for the public to address the board.
Yes, you may be receiving quite a bit of testimony today related to the proposal of the North Point proposal. That is a citizen's proposal for your consideration to add it to the comprehensive plan docket. Mm-hmm. We have received close to, I'll say, 180 comments online, urging the commissioners not to take any action related to this proposal. So I would assume that probably you may receive significant public testimony related to that this afternoon.
Okay. And nothing else that you're aware of?
No. Not that I'm
Tonight's the public hearing for the courthouse. You reckon anybody may come speak to that?
we receive, I'll say probably close to 20 written comments related to the public hearing. My guess is probably we're going to have significant amount of public to testify, or not that many.
Okay.
So that would be probably my guess.
Okay.
But we're ready to have a potential overflow on room 152. We're working on the details, just in case.
All right, and that'll be live streamed too?
Yes, it will be.
Great. Yeah, anything you might think might be coming up?
I had a couple of citizens say that there might be some testimony today about Torrens title land registration issues and the title examiner of title and some issues surrounding that issue.
Okay. Commissioner, anything?
No, sir.
Okay. All right, then we're going to move to item number 2 on the agenda, the county manager's update.
You know, usually I follow public testimony from last week. Last week, you received public testimony from Mr. Micah Anderson.
Excuse me.
And he produced some documentations related to copies of the RCW, the Revised Code of Washington, related to the functions of the auditor's office. But during his testimony, as I recall, he was not asking for anything other, perhaps just to be aware. So I'm not planning to follow up on that because I really can't put my hands around as to what the issue was when he testified. Okay. So I have no follow-up to any public testimony this afternoon.
But he's been in contact with the auditor as far as we know?
As far as I know, no. As far as I know, the only thing he provided was copies of the Revised Code of Washington related to the auditor's functions.
Okay. All right. Anything? All right, number 3 is consent items A and B. The first one's Public Health and Social Services, a resolution.
Yeah. Thank you, Commissioners. Item 3A, that's from Public Health. You reviewed this item last week. And this proposal before you includes 2 actions. One is creating a program manager position, and the other one is demolishing the Social Services Program Specialist number 3, effective June 30, 2009. The department has gone through the process of assessing what will be the best position to fill after the individual who's holding the position of Social Services Program Specialist number 3 is retiring effective June 30, 2019. And by the creation of this new position, program manager allows the department to go ahead and start recruiting for that position on the right classification. And hopefully will be an overlap before the individual who holds the position of Social Services Program Specialist can start downloading some of that information. This particular proposal has a negative impact, well, negative positive, how you want to see it. Goes from $7,766, which is the high pay scale of the Social Services Program Specialist number 3, to $7,601 of the program manager. That will be a decrease of $138 a month, or just about 2%.
Okay, anything? No. All right, thank you, Ramiro. And letter B, 3B is the voucher list for the week.
Yeah, this is your weekly update of approving the expenditures.
And I know I have, and I trust my seatmates have gone through the vouchers. Any questions or comments on the voucher?
This is for the 15th through the 19th? No, different week.
Voucher week, April 23rd, that week. Oh, yeah, that's today.
I'm
It's
good.
approval for today, but it's for the previous week, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah. Any comments or questions on that?
No.
Okay. Department items, number 4 on the agenda, Auditor's Office, approve a purchase of elections sorter upgrade.
This is a request for you to authorize the auditor's office to go ahead and upgrade the current ballot sorting machine. This machine is located on the ballot processing center in the Mudman area. This item, I checked with the auditor's office. They have gone through the ITC subcommittee. The ITC subcommittee has recommended this action. And also the internal auditor has determined that it's a sole source, so no bidding process is required. And the cost of this upgrade is $104,760.50 plus applicable taxes, where the state will contribute $25,980. And the remainder, $78,780, will be covered by the Elections Equipment Fund. That is not part of the general fund. And this item is included on the auditor's office for 2019.
Okay. Anything on the sorter?
No.
Okay. Agenda item number 5, emergency services, purchase of an expedition.
Yeah, you also review this item, and this is for your consideration. There is a typo there, I believe, but we have fixed that. And this is to authorize the Director of Emergency Services to go ahead and enter into a contract to purchase one 2019 Ford Expedition vehicle. That will be through the Washington State Department of Enterprise Services. And that is a normal procurement process, so we don't have to go on any individual bidding process for this vehicle. And this vehicle has reached a useful life where the maintenance costs more than what the vehicle is worth. And you heard from the Director of Emergency Services last week that in fact all the equipment, all the vehicles within the Medic One budget is going to be part of the ER&R program. And the ER&R program is set up to be in a way that in a yearly basis you contribute to the eventual replacement of a vehicle, avoiding this large expenditure at once. So they're coming into the ER&R program, all the vehicles. The surplus of the old vehicle first will be offered to any other first responder agency that might be able to use this vehicle. And also that's an acceptable practice, surplus in the vehicle.
Okay, anything? Nope, anything? Good. Agenda item number 6, Public Works, the Burlington Northern and the Santa Fe.
Yeah, you also reviewed this item, and I was happy that you allowed me to go to the whiteboard and explain what it's all about. I don't have those many opportunities.
You draw a good train, by the way.
So this is a follow-up to a motion that you took back in January 29, 2018, where you authorized the county manager to negotiate the terms of the contract with the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Railroad to construct a tunnel under the BNSF lines, and that is at the end of the Chehalis Western Trail, just about 2 miles south of Yelm Highway. And this has been a long needed project because the trail, as you head south, hits this T intersection and takes a hard left, gets into a gravel road, reaches into the shoulder of Rainier Road and picks up the trail 600 feet down that road. With this tunnel, what we plan to do is phase 1, that eventually will make a direct connection to the trail, avoiding getting into the gravel road, or gravel path, which is owned by BNSF, and also avoiding getting into Rainier Road on the shoulders. So this is really a safety improvement, direct connection to the trail. In this particular action for your consideration is to authorize the county manager to sign this agreement for $1,330,000 for the design, construction, and maintenance of two structures, and that's how the BNSF is going to carry the contract.
Okay.
And also authorize the county manager to sign subsequent amendments not to exceed 20% of the total amount to cover unexpected. We have money in the budget, and this is covered by the real estate excise tax 2, RE 2, as well as the traffic, the parks impact fees, and it's part of the budget.
Right. Anything?
For those who may be tracking this item closely, this was an uptick in cost, and I'm trying to remember what there was a design change
Right.
that required an uptick in the overall project cost. Can
Yeah,
you
thank you.
remind us what that was about?
Yes, the initial estimate included a single structure, made a single tunnel under the railroad tracks. But when BNSF started getting into the details, what happened was they decided perhaps it was better to have two structures, and also to extend additional 20 feet the concrete structure to pass the deep slopes. I think it's close to 25 feet from the bottom of the trail to the top of the railroad tracks. And I think that's really what it was, is given a rough estimate at the beginning. After they did some design work, they determined that the structure needs to be longer in order to accommodate the slopes of the railroad tracks.
Do you have anything, Gary?
No, I will say I would have preferred that we got some type of matching grant funds from the Department of, what is it, that Recreation, or there's a state
RCO.
So that we would have a little money left to do other projects, especially being we're having to address another issue, crossing the road going into that one development where the slope.
Right.
Top Ridge.
And
yeah.
So
so,
we're talking about phase
Phase
2.
two.
yes,
Yeah,
phase
yeah.
2 of that. And I don't know where we're at on doing this, but I suppose it's a little bit late to be approaching that now, but boy, that is going to be a big benefit to our community, and I think it would have been eligible for some type of state funds, but it never made it through. We didn't see through enough in the future, I guess, so that maybe it's on us that we didn't pay attention a little closer.
I think it is a good comment, and I think with this message, Public Works should be proactive in looking for funding opportunities for the trail, and that should be part of the normal business process, because you're right. Although the benefit is there to the citizens and from the recreationist point of view, and we have to be inventive and for seeking out any outside sources that help us carry through our programs and
I
projects.
guess I'll be satisfied to let you bring that message to Public Works for future endeavors.
I certainly will, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Thank you for that comment, yeah. All right, then we're going to 6B, release of easement for Albany Street Pond project.
As a matter of background, I think there was a stormwater project on Albany Street that it was laid out maybe 2 years ago. And the intent was to enclose the stormwater and take it to a pond.
This is Rochester.
Yes, and back in 1982, the county secured from a private property owner a drainage easement to manage the existing stormwater. Since the improvements, we no longer need that easement, and it's logical to return to the property owner that easement, and this is the intent of that. As we go through the process, we determine we no longer need that easement, and we just get back to the underlying property owner in this case.
Okay. Anything?
Good.
Go ahead.
First of all, is there a timing issue that mandates that we do this? There's a benefit to the county or the benefit to a citizen that wants to do something. Is there a reason that we need to do this right now? And I'll explain why I'm asking that question. Rochester, in that particular area, in the past has suffered some pretty extreme flooding issues having to do with high groundwater. Since we've taken that project on as a fix, we have not had any high water issues since then. I realize on paper and in the engineering world, it looks like it's probably going to solve that particular problem. I just wonder if it wouldn't be prudent on our part to wait to give this up until we do have a high water year that is periodic. I don't know, I can't tell you it's going to come next year or the year after, but I would like to see that project utilized in practical application of success before we give this up. Because if for some reason something doesn't work out the way it's penciled out to be, I'd hate to have to go through this whole process again to reacquire this. Now, if there's a reason for not waiting, I'd like to hear it.
I don't believe there is an urgency for you to take an action on this. I think it's just the logical steps. When we determine that we no longer need an easement, we just turn back to the underlying property owner. But related to your comment, as I understand this project, this easement was secured to accommodate a ditch line. Mm-hmm. So where the stormwater from the road was going to the ditch line and then eventually discharged to the nearby basin. By enclosing the drainage, the water no longer goes to the ditch. It goes to a different pond. In the event that we have high storm events, as you stated, in the next couple of years, if a flooding occurs because of the high storm events, perhaps that easement is not going to help because the issue will be located at a different location where the new stormwater pond will be located. That will be over capacity at that point. So that is just my understanding of the project.
I guess what I would say is that theoretically, all that being said, it's probably correct. It's probably going to work. But if there is no hurry to do it, we might have to revert back to the way it was, because the high groundwater in that area, I've been around that area for more than 50 years, and it comes and goes, and sometimes it's worse than others. And I hate to give up an option that we might need to revisit at some point in time. And because of that, if there is no hurry, I'm going to be opposed to giving this up at this point in time.
I don't know that I don't know the extent of the project in terms of whether commissioners' fears might be well-founded. I don't know.
Well, along with Commissioner Menser, I have to look at the experts, and I understand the concern of if we give it up, we may have to get it back later. And so I understand that, but when I listen to an engineer say, we give it up because the water's going somewhere else and it won't be an issue even with a high water year, I have to side with the engineer. So do we need more information? Do we need more information before we decide on this?
Well, I guess the one thing I would say is if you talk to some of the old timers down at Rochester, they're just questioning if this is really going to work. Those folks that have been around for a long time. And I'm not as much questioning our engineering activities and completion of the project as I am the unforeseen event that might take place where we do get an extremely high water issue. And that particular area of Rochester has been susceptible to this for quite some time. And I'm not 100% sure. I mean, I'd like to think that it's going to be fixed, but I don't see a reason that we have to give it up. Now, if there was a reason, then I'd say, yeah, let's give it up so commerce can continue or a taxpayer can do something with that property. But short of that argument, I don't see the rush. Yes, we've got it engineered. Supposedly we've got it fixed, but we get an exceptionally high groundwater issue. And you know, I would encourage my seatmates to talk to some of the old timers down there because they're the ones that brought it to my attention. So anyway, it's up to you guys. I'm just expressing a concern, and if there's no reason to give it up, I'm just asking, is it really prudent to give it up right now?
So if I just, Ramiro, I want to make sure I understood your response. Is it your contention that even if this issue did occur, as Commissioner Edwards describes, the fix may not require this easement, or is?
Yeah, because we taken the water on a different location. And again, as I understand with the project, the easement was secured to put a ditch. And that was the means of conveying the water off the road.
So if that's not cutting it, we're going to have to do something else.
Right,
it's not
and
going to involve
so
this
right now
easement.
the way we're conveying the water from the road is through pipes and catch basins and taking that to a pond at a different location. So my understanding is even if a high water event, the conveyance of the existing conveyance of the ditch may not be applicable, but really it's as to how the board would like to proceed on this.
Did you have more on that? Okay, go ahead, Gary.
I guess I would say that the ditch is still there. The mechanism is still in place if the new engineering becomes overwhelmed. So that's all I'm saying. I'm just being cautious. I hate to revisit issues when they're, when we haven't had a proven solution. That's all.
So I have a couple comments. I'll get to Robin first. Do you have something?
I was just thinking, we're going to be holding your meeting in Rochester next week.
Yep.
Maybe this is a item, since we're going to be in their community, that you would have on your agenda for next week.
That was one of my comments. But I have a couple questions of the engineer as well, or the engineer, county manager / engineer. The reason to release this is because a mechanism is in place to address the issue that we hold the easement for. And that fix is already done, or it will be fixed? It's done?
It's done. It's
done.
Completed, yeah.
And when was it completed?
I need to get that information.
It's been a few years, or it's been?
No, it's not a few years.
Okay.
No.
So then, I hate to use this word, but with the new engineering system, is it fail-safe? So it's in place and we release the easement, we get the big, oh my gosh, is it pretty much going to handle capacity? And I don't know what capacity level that would be in the event of a catastrophic, oh my God, lots of rain.
So let me give you an engineering response to that. So when we design conveyance systems as well as stormwater structures such as detention and retention ponds, we have to use what we call a continuous modeling process. And what it does is the modeling that goes in there is we assume back-to-back storms. In the past, we used to use the peak of a 100-year storm. That means that a storm of that magnitude, that intensity happens every 100 years. Well, that's no longer applicable.
No.
Because what we face in this region is similar storms back-to-back. And what the results of that model, what it does is the duration of the water that remains in the system is a lot longer than the single event that peaks and draws, right? So by having that longer duration of water and more water in the system, then the pipes needs to be big enough to convey that water, and the stormwater facilities such as the stormwater ponds need to be big enough to handle that. So within the whole model, there is an additional percentage that we add to include the unexpected. So whether it's a fail-safe, no.
No.
Because we cannot predict how the weather conditions, especially now that the weather is changing so much. But certainly, we don't account for a single storm. We account for larger storms to reservoir abilities.
The back-to-back repetitive.
Yeah.
Okay, so then to finish up, then what I'm hearing Commissioner Edwards say is some citizens in Rochester are not saying, yes, do it, and they're not saying, no, don't do it. They're saying, are you sure you need, is this going to be work? They just need more information, perhaps.
No, this is really just an administrative process.
Right. So
it's just I don't believe there is an urgency to this, and I don't believe there is a citizen requesting this item to be.
correct. So if it's a public education piece, informing them so they're comfortable with it, or they can voice their opinion, they're not comfortable with it. For next week's agenda in the evening in Rochester, on the 30th, perhaps there could be some type of a presentation or something on just this piece alone. Not so much public engagement, but but they can obviously public comment. They can comment on it. But some type of a short presentation that can be given to let the citizens of Rochester know what it is, what it isn't, what it's designed to do, what's happened,
Yeah.
and such. Maybe
Yeah, I can probably have.
give them information they don't have.
I can probably have Public Works provide a brief presentation on this project. Is that what you're asking?
I am. Well, what do you guys think?
I like that.
Is that all right? Okay.
So
something brief.
So what I'm hearing is you like to move this item to next
Please.
week, or you want to delete this or put on hold period this item? That's the question that I asked for the board.
I tell you what, how about, I like Robin's idea of just having it on our agenda. I mean, that we can just make mention of it if people have a concern. If they see it on our agenda, that might encourage them to come forward just for the 3-minute deal and ask, well, did you think about this or that? Or why don't we wait until there's an actual storm? Or, I don't know what people are going to come up with. But I just don't see the urgency at this point in time. So, I mean, we can always add this back on an agenda later on, even after we take public comment at a later date. Or maybe there'll be no comment and nobody's concerned. But it was brought to my attention, are you sure you got this fixed? I couldn't assure that we've got it fixed because we could have that very exceptional situation develop. We've got extreme weather that is supposedly going to be plaguing us for a period of time with climate change. So, I just would rather see the water running, because that groundwater, if you've never been there, when the groundwater is high in Rochester, it's high everywhere. It's kind of like the water just can't get away. And that was the purpose of putting this in '82. It was a solution for then. It didn't solve the problem because sometimes it gets overwhelmed. I tend to think it can still get overwhelmed because once that pond is full, and it's going to be full because the water table is actually part of the problem. So I just don't see a rush in why we need to do this if we don't have something waiting in the wings for this particular project. So I would actually make a motion to table this particular issue until a later date, and that later date could be when we hear something about it.
Druthers, your druthers.
That's fine. I'm okay with that.
As am I. So let's remove it from today. And the thing for next week is you can have a bunch of people or one or two people comment at public comment, not based on any information that has been given out, because then after public comment would be a 5 or 10 minute presentation from Public Works on that. So it's like putting the cart before the horse. But I would still like to have some type of informational piece or briefing put out to the public on this topic. If they want to comment, that's fine, but let's just put that off until that release of easement, until subsequent to Rochester. Then we can decide then, based on their input.
So, so let me see if I'm tracking what the board
Please.
likes to do. So what
You're good
I
at
get
this.
is you want to table this item until a later date,
Yes.
right? Okay, thank you.
I mean, because for me, I would like to ask some additional, based on those comments, I'd like to ask questions of staff, like, for example, if this fails, what would we do next? And what would that kind of construction look like? And would we need this easement? And at that point, I can make a motion to put it back on the agenda if I'm convinced that this easement is not necessary for.
Okay, so you want to table this item, and you want Public Works to come and brief the board on the project.
Personally, I want them to brief at the next, the board, but for the public.
That
for
could be part of our Rochester.
next week.
Right, we can do that. That's what I'm trying to clarify, what the board wants to do, because I don't think you're going to be able to have enough time to ask the questions that you have next week in order to feel comfortable. So that's what I'm trying to see how the board likes to proceed.
Could
So
I clarify
table
the motion?
this,
Hang on a second.
number one?
Can it be a presentation?
Could I make a motion that we table this till a future date, yet to be determined, as we gain more information? I mean, it's not going to hurt anything.
Number one, does that answer your question or no?
Well, it tables the item, yes.
Yes.
But I'm struggling on the presentation, whether it's a presentation next week, or whether you like to have a formal briefing by Public Works related to this
so-
project at a later date.
What I envision is a meeting from Public Works next week in Rochester about it.
A
And then if we
presentation.
have a presentation, and then if we have further questions, perhaps they can come in, again, this is just an option, they can come in and give us a briefing subsequent to next week, because we'll have perhaps some feedback from Rochester, I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud.
No, I agree. I'm not looking for an additional briefing. I think since we were all agreed to have some incorporation of this in Rochester, if I could ask 2 questions, then I may be satisfied. At the end of that, I may be satisfied, and I may be wanting to act on it, just making use of what we're going to do in Rochester. But I can make a motion. It doesn't have to be at the Rochester meeting. We can put on later, as we're all saying.
Gary, go ahead.
Yeah, I would just, because we're not in a rush, I don't think we ought to force the Public Works folks to come up with a presentation within a certain period of time. We put them under the gun. All I'm asking for is just delay this for a period of time, and through Robert's rules, I guess, is I'm trying to just table it until a future date. And we can bring this up again at any point once we've got a little more information. I've heard, well, I don't know, I don't know, I don't know. I don't like to hear I don't know.
Yeah.
And we're not in a big rush.
And just by way of information, next week's agenda is not that aggressive either.
Yeah. So.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have Tim Wilson.
If I could add a comment real quick.
Tell us who you
Tim
are.
Wilson, Water Resources Manager of Public Works. It's actually my staff that's moved this project through the process, and I'd just like to add that it is the result of a drainage study in the area, as is a matter of course, and significant public outreach efforts in the area. So there already have been open houses in the area. That being said, we can easily have staff available at the board's meeting next week to address any questions that come up regarding the easement and the project in general, if that would be helpful.
Response?
I just think and this is, I think, what you're saying. I just think that to have a Rochester-related item on at the Rochester meeting, when it just came up by chance on our own agenda, it makes a lot of sense.
Sure.
And, you know, whether that just spurs some citizens to throw some comments out there over the ensuing few weeks or not, it seems like a logical thing to do.
You know, I'm going to make one comment. Some years back, we built, in total, about a $100 million jail. Well-intended, everything was going along good. Things happened. We had a perfect storm. We had the economy turn upside down. We had some other things happen, and it didn't work. So all I'm saying is, what is the rush for coming up with a solution? Because we don't have a problem, it doesn't look like, with hanging on to this easement until we just, gosh, I mean, I'd like to see it actually go through a severe storm and make sure it was done. That's all I'd like to do, but I don't think we need to rush into it. That's all I'm saying.
So let's table this today. We'll have some type of presentation without forcing or pushing public works. Could you have something like 10-minute gig for next Wednesday?
Sure.
Or next Tuesday evening? To put the information out to the public?
That's fine. You already voted on tabling this item.
Yeah.
So that decision has already been made to a later date. And yeah, we'll coordinate with Public Works to give a presentation on
It's
the
the
project.
perfect opportunity. In Rochester, a Rochester issue, put it out there, give them the information, and then subsequent to that, we'll chat about it again. All right? Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Romero, anything else on that? No. Did we beat that up pretty good? Thank you. Agenda item number 7, CPED, Community Planning Economic Development, the Development Code Amendments.
Let me take you back to the planning session that you had on March 29, 2019, and where you discussed the items that you would like to add to the development code docket. And you had a discussion related to the proposed items that staff brought to your attention. And this is the result of that meeting. So this afternoon, after staff's presentation, I would like to walk the public as to how the board voted on those particular items. So before you, item A5, which is the review of the administrative variances, limit and zoning ordinances. It was a 2-to-1 vote where Commissioner Menser voted no. Item A7, the review of the all low impact development standards. It was 2-to-1 vote where Commissioner Menser voted no. Item A9, amend the planned industrial park district to allow correctional facilities at the special as a special use. That was 3 unanimous vote to include this item. Item A16, amend the zoning ordinance to add a site plan review process for a single resident in order permits. That was a 2-to-1 vote where Commissioner Menser voted no. Items A6, A13, and A15. Those are mainly related to 1, A6 is the critical area ordinance related to the shoreline management plan. Item A13, miscellaneous critical errors that needs to be corrected on the comp plan. Item A15, it changed the name of chapter 20.6 violations to enforcement administrative procedures. That's a cleanup items. All those 3 items, A6, A13, and A15, were voted unanimously by the board. And you also consider another citizens initiative. That was item number 3. It was 2-to-1 vote where Commissioner Menser abstained at that point, not necessarily voted no. And that is the a review of the land use on the property located in Rainier Road and Yelp Highway. And the way you decided to go with this process is a two-step process. Approve the development code document based on the items that are just outlined, and the new citizen item, you ask the staff to go with public comment, and that is coming up again later on. That's what I'm planning to explain how the vote came to be. So this afternoon, what you do is you, for consideration, will approve the development code docket as a whole based on those voting. So, any questions?
Yeah, anything?
Based on my list, seems like one was missing.
Which one?
So the third one, basically the fourth one that you mentioned, was that about the plat extensions?
Yeah, that's the A17. That was the first citizens initiative. That was a unanimous.
The one I'm missing that I don't think you covered on my list was there was a one, and I don't have the numbers, I don't have the numbering system, but it related to vests, like expanding the categories at which vesting occurs.
That is the A17.
That's A17, okay. That's the one.
That's the citizens
You're
initiative.
getting,
Yeah.
so.
And Cindy is going to clarify everything what I said.
Good morning.
I just had an extra one on my list, and I'm trying to figure out
Yeah,
where.
yeah, please let me know what if my notes doesn't correspond with yours.
Yes, A17 is the plat extension.
Tell us who you are,
This
Cindy.
is Cindy Wilson with
Thank you.
Community Planning.
Thank you.
A17 is the plat extension. That was a citizen suggestion for lengthening the time for plat extensions that may run into specific issues. And there is, A16 is the vesting one. That was the amend zoning code to add site plan review and allow vesting for the permits. It's a very long title, but that is what we would be working on there.
But he didn't mention that one.
A16, yes, there was 2-1. You voted against it. That's my notes, unless I'm off on that.
Can we go over the list again? I honestly, that wasn't, when you went through, that was my
Okay.
list, and I also don't remember voting against that one.
So A5,
Now I've got the numbers in front of me, so hopefully.
okay, A5, it was a 2-1.
Yep.
You voted no. A7, that was 2-1. You voted no. A9, that is unanimous.
Yes,
Okay. Let's move to A16. That was a 2-1. You voted no.
okay, I guess I just. And then
A17 is
Yeah.
the Citizens Initiative, and that was a unanimous. And the reason they became a A617 is because that was already went through the public comment, and that was included in the list. Okay.
Yep.
And then you have A6, A13, and A15, where the board approved that unanimously. And there was another citizens initiative. That was the citizens initiative number 3. The board approved 2-1. You abstained on that vote. And the next step on that item was to go with the public comment. So that is why it's not included on the list for your consideration today. Because that's what the board approved. The question, as you may remember, whether you wanted to wait for the second citizens initiative until the public comment is completed and then you adopt the entire docket, or it was a 2-step process. And that's the 2-step process that you have before you. It's based on the voting data I just outlined. And also the majority of the board approved the second citizens initiative to go to the public comment. And depending on that, we'll come back to you to amend the docket again to include that item.
No, I think I'm going to drop this because it doesn't affect the overall. I think you got my votes backwards on 16 and 17, which is why I'm confused. But it really doesn't matter because I agree that they were approved by a majority of the board, and so it's kind of neither here nor there at this point.
No, but please clarify, because I don't want to misrepresent your vote this
Okay,
afternoon.
Yeah.
I believe that I voted for 16.
So you think the
I
A16
believe
was
16 was a
unanimous?
unanimous vote,
Okay.
and 17 was a 2-1. Because I had concerns about, there was a lot of pieces of that, and there were
Okay.
involved hearing examiner and a lot of different.
Yeah, I will highlight this afternoon based on your records.
Commissioner Edwards? Yes, sir.
I guess regardless of how this comes out on this vote, we're only voting to review, and we're not voting to put an ordinance in place or anything at this point. So whatever we vote on today is kind of what the folks in planning will be working on.
Yeah, that's
Is
the
that
work
right?
plan that you approved for CPID staff.
Right, so,
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to have plenty of time to
Oh,
review.
each item
to
will
see
come
if we
before
agree
you.
with these individual items as time goes on.
Each item will come back to you before you make a final decision. You're not approving anything at this point on the specific items. You just approve what I call is the work plan for staff to work on.
Yeah, and I want the public to be clear that a lot of my votes related to what I thought were the most pressing priorities
Yeah.
on staff time, not really about the merits of each individual proposal.
And that's
Yeah,
what I was
the
planning to
capacity
clarify, as my notes
Capacity
stated.
issue,
As
yeah.
my notes stated, that your vote against any of those items, it was mainly your concern of the amount of workload that you put on staff. And I think that was probably the,
Based on the comp
Yeah.
plan and
Yeah.
other issues that we need, joint plans.
Thank you. Thank you. So that is agenda item number 7. We're keeping it on. We're going to vote on that today, yeah?
so
Okay.
to clarify, you will not be voting on individual items this afternoon. You will vote
Nope.
on the list.
And you're going to go through that list again today?
Yeah, after staff's presentation, I will go through the list, highlighting the different votes. I will not be going on detail of each item.
And for the public, this is the development code docket, not comp plan.
The comp plan, you have a briefing tomorrow.
Yeah.
And that is another decision point that you will take in the next
Okay.
couple of weeks.
All right. 7B, Streamflow Restoration Planning Grant.
You reviewed this item last week, and this is a request to enter into an agreement with the Washington State Department of Ecology to accept $260,700 to support Thurston County participation on the Streamflow restoration. And this is related to the Hearst decision. As you know, we have to participate on the 5 different WIRAs. And as a result of that, each of those WIRAs, they need to develop what they call a mitigation plan. And each of those has a different deadline. And you approved early in the year for the CPID director to go ahead and support the Nisqually mitigation plan that was submitted to DOE. And the item that you have next on your agenda brings back for you to take a formal action on approving the Nisqually watershed. And again, this item is only to, is to accept $260,700 from DOE to support this effort.
Go ahead, Gary.
And I see that it's always a little easier to vote to accept dollars. Is there a reason that's 20%? And I'm kind of inclined to make it 25% if somebody doesn't spend some money elsewhere, and then we're eligible for that funding. That's the
Yeah,
only-
the 20% just to be consistent on some of the authority you have given and any other items, but certainly you can vote 25,
I mean, that way they won't have to
100%.
come back if we get a
It is
bit
up to
more
you how
money.
you like to approach
I
that.
that's all.
And that's just built in because the state's going to give us nearly $261,000 from ecology. And if they choose to give us more, then that 20% covers that. If it's within 20% more they want to give us or gift us, rather than having to come back to the board for approval again. So Commissioner Edwards is just looking to bump that up. So if they want to give us 25% more, we don't have to come back, we just do it.
That's it.
So why not say 50 or 100 or 40? So, Ty, you have any comments?
100%.
It's not likely.
Allison's
but-
shaking her head there. That makes me nervous. What's happening there?
Okay. So what,
So
20%,
they-
25, you
what
care?
here the proposal is to up
I don't
to
care.
25%.
I'd just say
That's fine, do it.
20%.
Okay, so we'll
Yeah.
change that for this afternoon. Thank you.
Just a nickel more. All right, that's 7A, or 7B. 7C, resolution approving the Nisqually Watershed Management Plan Addendum.
Yeah, this is related to the Nisqually watershed. And I will ask probably Allison to come and give us a perspective because this is a brand new item there for you today.
Good morning, Allison.
Good morning, Commissioners. Allison Osterberg, Senior Planner with Community Planning and Economic Development. And the item that's on the agenda today is for the board to take a formal action approving the Nisqually Watershed Management Plan Addendum. And that is the plan that was developed under the Streamflow Restoration Act, the legislation in response to the Hearst decision. And as you'll recall, we worked to develop that plan on an aggressive timeline set by the legislature and briefed the board on this earlier this year when the draft plan was ready, and the board gave provisional direction to staff at that time to approve the plan addendum that was developed, which the planning unit approved unanimously and sent to the Department of Ecology, and the Department of Ecology adopted that plan. It was the first one that's successfully completed in the state. And so now the appeal period for that has passed, and so what's in front of you is the formal resolution that the board is approving that plan and the work that's in it. So there are continuing work to implement that plan. That's part of this. And the previous item, the Streamflow Restoration Participation Grant from Ecology, will help to fund that work,
Okay.
as well as work in our other watersheds.
Good. Questions, comments? Anything? Good, thank you, Allison.
Thank you, Allison. Yeah.
Please stand by.
Joshua Cummings, Director of Community Planning and Economic Development. Since we were talking about the Nisqually watershed and streamflow restoration and all those topics, we have our estimable Allison Osterberg headed off to do professional opportunities in the coming weeks. I wanted to introduce Caitlin Nelson, a member of our staff that will be taking on a lot of these topics, and just make sure that as we make this transition, you guys have a chance to see Caitlin and know that she'll be the person taking those roles on. So I don't want to slow this process down, but I wanted to make sure that you guys had a chance to see Caitlin. Would you like to introduce yourself?
Welcome again.
Hello. I've been working here since January, and I'm loving it here.
Good.
I got my degree at Western Washington University in urban planning and sustainable development through Huxley's College of the Environment, and I've been working for Anacortes for the last 3 years as both a current and long-range planner. Very short staff, so I got a little bit of everything working there, so I'm very excited to be working on this.
And you're living down here now, Caitlin, right?
Yes, I actually grew up in Puyallup, so this isn't too far away from
Good.
family and whatnot.
From roots, good. Well, we're glad to have you for sure. Anything?
Fantastic.
Any, Gary?
No, sir.
Thank you, Josh.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Big shoes to fill.
I understand Caitlin, you'll be Chehalis Basin person, according to Cindy, so we look forward to working with you there.
Agenda item number 8, Commissioners and County Manager items.
Yeah, this is for your consideration, is for you to consider approving a new policy related to procurement. Later on the agenda today, we have an item for you to hear from myself and Robin as to the details of this procurement policy. So this is for your consideration this afternoon. And again, depending on the information presented to you later today, this is just an item that needs to be approved. What I'm saying is needs to be approved is we need to align with the state auditor that is coming to do their yearly visit. And one of the items was to have this procurement policy in place. Just to give you a taste of that, I believe that is you may be welcoming some of the changes to the procurement policy as we have attempt to streamline the process as how you conduct business in the county, but more to come later on the agenda.
I don't want to parse words, but he says we attempt to streamline. Are we streamlining?
Well, there's many ways as to how we can streamline the process. This is just one of them.
Okay.
And what I'm saying unattempted is because you need to vote on that.
All right.
And after you vote on that, then we have accomplished
And these are recommendations from the state auditor?
a combination.
Okay, a combination of them, okay.
So more to come, but what we're required to do is align with federal rules. And the state auditor is auditing on whether or not we have. So they've already asked for our procurement policy. As soon as you approve this afternoon, I'll be sending it off to them.
And they'll go, yippee-yay, look at
Yeah.
that. Okay.
Commissioner Messier.
Yes.
So, okay, well, you just answered my question. There's obviously a time issue because
There
we
is.
don't usually see things on the afternoon that we haven't yet even been.
Yes, so I do
You may recall
apologize for
this
that.
item was on last week, but unfortunately, we were not ready because still under legal review. So now it's coming back to you to decide.
Okay.
Gary? All
No
right.
issues.
And again, more in detail later today.
Okay.
This
good,
morning.
Thank you. Takes care of that, and then we get down to the commissioner stuff. And then this evening, at 5:30, we have a public hearing on the proposed ordinance regarding regular property taxes.
Yeah, the 5:30 public hearing, and there's a special meeting for you, which is outside of 5 o'clock. Everything has been posted, and from the legal terms. And you will be receiving public testimony related to a proposal for you to consider put a ballot measure before the voters of an upcoming election, whether it's the public hearing was on August 6, 2019, November 5, 2019, and February 11, 2020, to ask the voter to support or not the increase in property taxes to fund the new courthouse and regional administrative building. Robin will provide a little bit of feedback this afternoon as to what that is. I will also provide some information related to whether it will be a combination of between myself, Robin, and Rick Thomas related to the specific project. But the bottom line is really this is an action that you will may consider put into the voters to support this new project. At this point, the draft ordinance includes a 47 cents per 1,000 valuation, and that is, if you approve this, that will go to the voters on that specific items.
Ty, you got anything?
No.
Gary?
No.
Yes, I do. So this is going to be downstairs this evening in 152.
No, it's going to be here. This
In this room?
280. Yeah.
Okay, it'll be live streamed and videoed and all that.
Yeah, it will be live stream, and just in case we have an overflow in 152nd.
And this is this is not the end of public comment. People can still keep their cards and letters coming.
No,
Or
the
just shut it?
formal public comment ends.
Ends
so,
today.
yeah,
Okay.
related to this particular item.
But if somebody sent in something, he would still read it and get it.
Well, anybody can come, but we will not be able to include as part of the record.
Okay.
That,
Okay.
that's the difference.
All right, got it.
Yeah, you're right. Any citizens can send a comment to you anytime.
Anytime, yeah. Okay, go ahead, Gary.
I had asked earlier what the final cost of a project like this is to the taxpayers, including interest and debt servicing. I haven't got that answer yet. I just wonder when that's coming.
That information was provided to you 2 months ago as part of the bond briefing that you had from Duncan. I can probably have that copy available to you.
Okay,
like-
if you could,
Because on that worksheet outline what the full payment will be on that $250 million project, because adding interest. And based on that information that was provided to you along the other stakeholders, and that's how we needed to address is the total cost of the bond payment per interest, and that how translated to the 47 cents per 1,000 valuation. But certainly I can give you a copy
Okay.
before this afternoon.
and that'll be an estimate, right? It's not going to be an exact amount.
Well, it's an estimate because without knowing what will be the interest rates when we go and secure the bonds, but it's what we call it was a financial stress test our bond counsel went through just to make sure we had capacity to do it.
So I could tell you right now, or give me like 2 minutes. I can tell you what a payment would be. As soon as the cell comes up. So if we issue bonds in the amount of 230,000 million, and if it's a 4%, $15,481,000 roughly. And part of the reason that this is an estimate is tax-exempt municipal bonds are not structured like a fixed mortgage on your home. When the bid comes, the bidder can bid different interest rates for the different years of bond issue. So it could be structured where the bond payments go up over time or down over time. They're not exactly the same. We know in the bid exactly how much we pay in each year, but it's not fixed. But it is going to be roughly 15.5 million a year on a $230 million loan at 4% for 23 years.
Is it kind of like a adjustable rate mortgage when you buy a home?
No, it's really not, because it's not even like that. And the reason it's not like that is because in a variable rate mortgage that you get on your home, the interest rate is tied in any given year to some factor like the CPI. It's the variable interest rate is truly that, and you get a range. It might go up, it might go down. You never know what it's going to be. When we issue these bonds, we know exactly what the payments are going to be. They're just not necessarily exactly the same in each year, but we know what they're going to be at the time we accept the bid.
Okay.
But I'll give you a copy of that information.
Okay,
Commissioner,
thank you.
To make it available to
And,
you. And in fact, I'll make a copy for all three of you.
Thank you. And I don't know about my seatmates, but I'm receiving quite a bit of lobbying and feedback. Do it, don't do it, do this, do that, don't do this, don't do that. And where are you, where are you, where are you? And I just want the public to know that we may or may not make a decision subsequent to the public hearing tonight.
Well, this evening, what I have is only one action.
One
for you,
option,
is
okay.
to close the public hearing.
To close it. Okay, so we won't be deciding tonight then.
What I bring to your attention, you will review the agenda for next Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
I do have an item for you to take out an affirmative action or not on this particular matter, because on this Thursday you have a briefing where the survey will be formally presented to you. I shared with you a draft copy.
Mm-hmm.
So a final version of that will be formally presented to you this Thursday morning during the commissioners check-in.
At 10.
So and my attempt was to give you all the pertinent information before you make a decision.
Good.
So today you hear the public hearing. On Thursday you will have the formal briefing of the results of the survey. Then you will have all that information to you. And when we review the agenda for next Tuesday, which is scheduled for Monday, then that will be in the position as to how you will like to, the board, how you like to proceed on
Okay.
this.
I just want the public to have a false expectation. Public hearing, here's our comments, decide. But
And,
that's not going to happen.
and absolutely correct, because one of the options the board has is to do nothing. And that
Okay.
certainly is part of the process.
All right. Anything?
No.
All right. Thank you. It's 10:06. Let's take a 10-minute break, please. Come back at about as close to 10:15 or 10:16 as we can. We'll be in recess for 10 minutes. Oh, we're on. Thank you. Welcome back. Excuse me. Welcome back to the agenda setting and work sessions for April 23rd. And we're going to move right into the agenda for next Tuesday, which is April 30th, and it's going to be held in the evening in Rochester. And location, time, date, place, and all that, you'll find it online. All the proper notices are put out. But that's where we will be next Tuesday evening, not next Tuesday afternoon here. So number one, it says 2 p.m. call to order. We'll have to change that.
Yes, I will.
That's off by a few hours. It'll be starting at 5:30? Okay, 5:30 p.m.
And then the setting agenda is going to be on Monday.
This agenda setting next week will be Monday, not Tuesday. Oh, that's interesting. Okay. And I'm guessing that's on our calendars then. I just wanted to double check real quick. Good grief. Okay. Then we'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance in Rochester, led by Vice Chair Commissioner Edwards. Got it?
Got it?
We'll do the approval of the agenda and the board meeting minutes from April 23rd, from today. They're going to move into presentations, and it looks like the first one is Bicycle Commuter Month Proclamation. And so who's going to tell us about that?
So,
Assistant County Manager, here we go.
yes, on the spot. So you will be proclaiming May Bicycle Commuter Month, and we will have someone there to accept the proclamation.
And I reckon it will be Chris Hawkins,
He
Hawkins,
usually
yeah.
does. And then the real question is, since we're in Rochester, you know, how many of our regular staff will be attending? So if he doesn't have another item on the agenda, I'm not sure.
Well,
Romero can fill us
The burning
in.
question I have, though, is Chris going to ride his bike from Olympia to Rochester?
For Bicycle Commuter Proclamation.
Chris Hawkins and Duncan Green.
Oh, we'll be there.
And Duncan?
If it were Bicycle Commuter Month, you would.
Yeah.
So,
but
yeah.
We will not have proclaimed it yet.
Got it,
Yeah,
okay.
Mr. Duncan
Nice
Green,
save.
sorry that was a little late.
No worry.
Coming to the break, and Chris Hawkins. Whether Chris will ride his bike down there, it wouldn't surprise me,
Yeah,
put it that way.
but it's dark and a long ride
Yeah.
back. All right. Questions or comments on the proclamation of bicycle? No? Okay. Next is National Military Appreciation Month.
Yes, and what we have lined up is Mr. Louis Zapier from the American Legion will be in attendance, as well as Ronald Grantham will be in attendance. Both represented the military community.
And they're in the Rochester area?
Yep, that's right.
Okay. La?
Mr. La Bonita Bomar, clerk of the board, Mr. Zapier wanted to make sure that Commissioner Edwards knew he was going to be there in attendance. And Ronald Grantham will be there. I'm waiting on his absolute confirmation.
Okay. And there may be a couple more, or maybe not. We don't know yet.
Well, there may be a couple more, as Commissioner Hutchings asked me to contact Mark Moffitt and Wayne Jones. Mark Moffitt is Public Health Social Services, and Wayne Jones is with the Human Resources Department. So
Right.
I will be contacting both of those gentlemen today.
And or someone from the VFW in Tenino.
Yes, I tried to contact someone from the Tenino and have not been successful as of yet.
Okay, that takes a while. All right, thank you. Questions on that?
No, sir.
Nope?
Nope.
Okay. Next then is Emergency Services Snowstorm Response.
Yeah, this is an opportunity for you to acknowledge the first responders on the effort and the great work they did during the February 8th through the 14th snowstorm event. Just to give you highlights, during that time, volunteers of the Jeep Patrol, the South Puget Sound Medical Mobile Search and Rescue provided transportation to medical staff and patients for 2 dialysis centers in Thurston County. Over February 12th, a special election was closed and ballot boxes were required by law to be secure search and rescue volunteers were able to transport election staff to pick up their ballot boxes. Also, Mr. Bill Gillespie was invaluable in dispatching the search and rescue and coordinating all the different efforts. Volunteers provided their own vehicles and donated their own time. The total number of transportation requests were 32. The total number of volunteer hours to provide transport were 102 hours. And the total mileage during that snowstorm event was 780 miles. So there will be a sizable group that will be present for you to have the opportunity to say thank you. And Kurt Harding will give the presentation. And that will be Mr. Bill Gillespie, Brian Ritter, Ben Leiter, Blade Dearly, Dina Brown, Devin Guy, Jason Simmons, Greg Ambrose, Ian Harris, and Matt Grafnino. So those will be the individuals that will be accepting your thank you for their job well done.
Good. And again, this is going to be in Rochester next Tuesday evening, 5:30. Is it at the high school or middle school?
Middle School Commons.
Okay, perfect. Come one, come all. It's almost like Rochester bringing the circus back to town. Huh.
Did you get that fixed?
Public comment. We expecting anything?
Before that, Commissioners, you
Yes.
added a new item today, which will be a public works presentation on the Albany Street stormwater project.
I figured that
will
would
be
be
added
later,
to the
but yeah,
agenda.
presentation, okay. Thank you. On the easement.
No, on the project, no, not on the easement.
On the project.
I believe that was the request.
Okay. And then opportunity for the public to address the board. And I would anticipate that Rochester will come out and address the board.
I sure hope so.
Yeah. Agenda item number 2 is county manager's update.
I will follow up with any particular items that you may hear today, although maybe I will wait for another week just to make sure that I will address in this room as opposed to outside. If there's
Okay.
anything to be addressed, I'll follow up.
And I'm going to I have it on my PIO check-in down here, but I'm going to ask now before I forget, even though I have it written down. Rochester next week, the BoCC, it's videoed and streaming and audio, all that stuff too. It's all set up.
Yes, and actually, excuse me, TC Media can live stream through their van, so they'll have their van there, so we will also be live streaming the video.
Wow, good.
So
Very,
all
very
of it
good.
will be similar to what they expect to see every Tuesday.
And you guys have already been down there reconnaissing it, doing the recon and all
Yesterday, Brian and TC Media went down there to make sure everything was ready, PA system and all that.
that. Perfect. Good, thank you. All right, agenda item number 3 is consent items A and B. A is central services.
Now we need to add, this is an actual from the new information technology department. We need to change the system to accommodate that.
Yeah.
And this proposed action is for you to consider reclassifying a vacant position from a GIS 2 to a GIS 1. That's Geographic Information Services Specialist. And the reclassification really start reflecting the needs of the department. And this particular action will result in a reduction of salary from $7,256 to $6,085. That will be a reduction of $1,171 a month, or a decrease of 16%.
All right, questions or comments?
What was the percent you said?
It's about 16%.
Reduction.
1/6 reduction.
Gary? All right, and 3B would be, or will be, the auditor's financial services voucher list, and we'll get that this week. Department items, number 4 on the agenda is emergency services, disaster recovery interlocal.
Yes, let me take you back to February of this year, 2019, where Commissioner Menser, Commissioner Hutchins, among other elected officials and staff from the Thurston County region attending an emergency FEMA-led integrated emergency management course in Ocean Shores. As a result of that meeting, I think it was predicated as to how we're going to be implementing perhaps a recovery after a 9.2 earthquake in the region. It was a 3-day course. They, including myself and the assistant county manager, participated. I believe that it was a great opportunity to see how we're going to be implemented the recovery actions. And it was divided in so many different groups. And the group that included the elected officials, one of the items that came out of that group is now that we had those conversations, it is the next step is to take an action. So the resolution before you is really to set the stage to start working on an interlocal agreement among the many different jurisdictions as to how the operating procedures will be on this group of elected officials, how they need to operate in terms of in the event of that emergency recovery. This is really the first step, the resolution, and that was one of the to-do items that I believe I got out of that session. First is the resolution, acknowledging the need to do something, and also this resolution puts in perspective that we need to enter into an interlocal agreement. I will share this resolution to our other jurisdictions here in the county, and hopefully they will take similar action. But at the end of the day, is really getting into an interlocal agreement. They may include exploring the options of creating an emergency fund across the region, and really robbing with the financial managers from the different cities is working on that, whether it's feasible, viable. All that will needs to be part of this interlocal agreement. And I think it is, I believe it's essential to get through this process because this interlocal agreement will set the stage as to the operating procedures, the roles and responsibilities. When we get to the point of responding to this emergency, at least we have a framework as to how we need to respond, as opposed to develop a framework when the emergency is before us. That's really the gist of this action for your consideration.
Comments on that?
No, I just, I hadn't seen it, but I brought it up. So conceptually, I'm 100% support.
Question or comments, Gary, on that? When I saw it on the agenda, I just removed it off our check-in item. I was going to ask you about that, and I'm very pleased that even though this just happened, was that February? We're in Ocean Shores, and here it is April, and we're to this point already, along with a firm commitment from all the other jurisdictions, local jurisdictions. This is exciting. This is cool stuff. Yeah. It'll be great to have that next week in Rochester too. Let them hear what we're doing as a county to protect people. Yeah, so good, very good. Thank you for that.
That's good.
Item number 5, Public Works, and we're talking about the Summit Lake Special Use District again.
Yeah, this is for your consideration to take an affirmative action, whether you would like to continue with a process. You held a public hearing, and later today on your agenda, you have a more detailed briefing from Tim Wilson as to the results of the public testimony that you received, and then at that point, we'll give you the opportunity to weigh in. This item for your consideration is just in the event that you may take an affirmative action to continue with the process. And this is what it is. If you are considering taking the next steps in the process, there is a timeline associated with this, and that is why it's on your agenda next Tuesday. But again, today, you will have a briefing from Tim Wilson related to this particular item.
Okay. Anything on that?
Nope.
Gary?
I guess what I would ask at this point is, if I have concerns here about this upcoming issue, should I wait till after session later today when.
I will recommend that.
Okay,
Please.
okay. Good enough, I have no questions.
So this is the Lake Summit SUD, Special Use District, but I have on here SPU. What does SPU stand for? Oh, it is. Oh, God, I thought, what the heck did I miss?
No, it's
Okay,
a
thank
typo.
you.
Thank you. SUD.
Pretty close, though. All right. All right, agenda item number 6, Commissioner and County Manager items.
Yeah, this
Dun, dun,
is,
dun.
this again, we will be holding a public hearing today related to consider putting a ballot measure before the voters to fund the new courthouse and regional administrative building. And this action is for you to have that option before you. And I did find that there is a typo on the first line, we'll correct that. And the reason why this item is on the 30th, whether you like to take that or not, is to, in the event the board would like to put this on the August election, those are the timelines that we need to meet. Because if the board decides to put in the August special election, then we need to have a specific timelines as to when that needs to be submitted to the auditor's office, and also the timelines as to when you consider appointing a pro and against committees, up to 3 on each. So from the administrative point of view, from my point of view, I just want to make sure that I provide the board all the options, and this is the timelines that I have for you.
Okay. And again, La Bonita, that all the time frames will be all adjusted then for next Tuesday's meeting in Rochester to 5:30, and then all the reflecting after that, so it's all public notice, people know. Okay, good. Thank you. Anything further on next week's agenda?
So if hypothetically the board was in agreement on a date that was not August, like November or February, 100% agreement, would we take an action at this point anyway, even though the timelines are longer?
I will recommend that.
Okay.
And that will give more time to secure what you need to do, and
Just
I think
curious.
it really provides an affirmative action from the board, whether you're committed or not. And yeah, because the options they led to the public hearing today was the 3 options: August election, the general election in November, and the special election in February 2020.
All right. Yes, sir.
But you're not bound by those 3 dates.
That's right, we have 4 options.
And the other
Right.
options do nothing.
Do nothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you're not bound for those 3 options.
Got it.
So, and again, what I'm planning to do is you will hear public testimony today. Then you will hear the presentation of the survey on Thursday morning during your check-in. And on Monday morning, when we review the agenda for Tuesday afternoon, then I will facilitate your conversation, and then we'll change that agenda accordingly. The reason that we're going to have an agenda setting to review the agenda on the 30th on Monday, not in the regular Tuesday, is because the 5:30 meeting that you have on the 30th is a special meeting. If there's any changes on the agenda that needs to occur, we need to have 24 hours in advance notice to place the revised agenda. So the reason that I have that on Monday is just to make sure that if there's any changes, including this, that we have enough time to inform the public of the changes that you are considering.
Sounds good.
Glad you're paying attention.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Anything further? No?
Nope.
Good point to bring up, thank you. Okay, we're back to this agenda then for today, and the next item is proclamations and awards, and we have La Bonita back again.
La Bonita Bolmar, Clerk of the Board. We've already reviewed under the proclamations the Bicycle Commuter Month and the National Military Appreciation Month. The other 2 proclamations on your list are Public Service Recognition Week, and that's the week of May 5th through the 10th. Maria Ponte, the Human Resources Director, will be here to present. And also, we have the Emergency Medical Services Week, May 19th through the 25th, and that will be Kurt Harden, the Emergency Services Director. Those are the only other two that I have in the queue for proclamations for May.
Okay.
And as far as boards and commissions, I don't have anything for this week.
Yeah, that's nice. Do you have a bunch of proclamations you want to propose? Or you?
I'm pretty good with bicycles and military.
Yes. All right, thank you all. Now we're at the one of the favorite parts of the agenda, PIO check-in, where we get to chat with our PIO.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Good morning.
Megan Porter, Public Information Supervisor. I just wanted to once again reiterate the upcoming public opportunities for people to come and engage with their local government. So Tuesday, April 30th, 5:30, Rochester Middle School Commons. It will be live streamed and recorded. This is the BoCC regular Tuesday meeting. We've advertised it on social media, and we will be posting reminders. Brian also went down to the Rochester area and posted flyers. So hopefully that will generate some more individuals coming. The school has also posted on all of their reader boards that this is happening. So
We're going next, yeah.
so that it has been
Perfect.
announced pretty widely down in the Rochester area.
Like now appearing on stage.
Pretty much, yeah.
Good.
And has the chamber been contacted? I'm sure.
I'm not sure.
I would make sure you do that. We've got the president's email. Check with Thomasina. Tamara and Marla.
I will make sure that that happens.
Anything? Nothing for PIO?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, anything further for PIO? Okay, stand by.
Well, and then I also wanted to talk about the water panel discussion that we're holding at the Evergreen State College. That's going to be happening on Thursday, May 23rd from 4 to 6 p.m. Our Public Works, Community Planning and Economic Development, and Public Health and Social Services directors will be there to be talking about water quality, quantity, and stormwater. We had a good discussion yesterday about what the directors are going to be talking about the first half, where we'll have questions ready for them, and then it will be open for the students or any public who wants to attend to ask questions the second half. Commissioner Hutchings is going to be facilitating that.
Oh, it's on my calendar.
That event. So in this week and next week, we'll be finalizing the flyer and questions, and then start advertising that out to the students and to the public.
And on Chaos,
And on Chaos.
Chaos
Mhm.
Radio.
Yep, and the Evergreen, so we're working with a master's student group, a group of 3. This is part of their capstone project. And so they will be working on advertising as well with Evergreen, and providing us with some after-action evaluation of how we can do it better next time, and what worked well and what didn't. So it's going to be really valuable to us to get that feedback for our other directors panels that we're planning on having over the next few years. So
And that's May 23rd, 4, 5?
May 23rd, 4 to 6 p.m.
4
at
to
the
6.
Evergreen State College Purse Hall. Is that how you say it?
Is it Purse?
Purse Hall?
P-U-R-C-E?
Lecture Hall 1.
Less Purse, okay. Good.
Remind me what the vision is. You mentioned having more of them over the coming. How often are you planning to have them?
So the goal is to have 2 a year for the next biennium. That's part of our communications plan, to get out into the local colleges and universities, to introduce those students to what we do at the county. And some secondary effects of that would be jobs, different careers that they didn't understand, they may not know that we have available, as well as our volunteer advisory boards, committees, councils, and commissions, that there's opportunities for the students to participate in those as well.
So like the next one might be St. Martin's or
Possibly.
SPSCC.
Yes, so those are the
We're
two.
just starting with Evergreen.
Exactly. And the reason why we're starting with Evergreen is because the master's team reached out to us, and they're Evergreen students, so.
Perfect.
Last Friday, Brian, Dominique, and I went out to BHO for my quarterly gig, whatever, with BHO, to showcase BHO and a peer support counselor and a recipient of the program and graduate of the life skills program. This young man suffers with schizophrenia. And so before these interviews, I always put a thing of tissue out there in case any of us break up, right? And we were all very stoic, but the camera crew from Thurston Community Media were picking out tissues because he shares an exceedingly very touching story. So I was ecstatic about how last Friday's taping went. It was beautiful. And then I'm working on something for next quarter, next month, and then something for the following quarter, whenever my quarter's up, whenever I do that again. I have another topic for that, but I was very happy with the way that it's gone so far. TCM is doing a great job with us, and Brian's stepping up. And so are there big plans or changes beyond just what we're doing with our little video vignettes and pieces? Is there anything?
Well, we have big projects that we are working on, one of those being the courthouse informational video to provide citizens with a look of the current courthouse complex. So we're working on finalizing that script and getting timelines down for producing that video. So that's another big one that's going to be coming out hopefully in the next 2 months or so.
Okay.
Did you have it? Something?
The script is written already, or?
It's drafted. It's drafted, but I had a conversation with TC Media yesterday, and we kind of had to maneuver it a little bit. And then I'm going to be meeting with with the administrators for the district and Superior Court to kind of talk about how we want to include jury feedback of jurors of their experience, and so that is probably going to alter the script a little bit, and then it'll have to go through our review process again.
And my understanding is it's going to capture elements of the deficiencies of the current facility.
Yes.
For those that are not familiar.
Yes.
Will it actually include like the cost estimates that we have
Yes.
about what it would take to get through?
Yes,
the
it does
current-
include
okay.
that. And I would be happy to send you all the draft as well if you'd like to see it.
Yeah, I would just sooner rather than later in terms of like getting it done. I think it's important.
Yeah.
And we need as much time as we can.
Anything, Kerry?
No, sir.
Okay. Thank you, Megan.
Thank you.
Now moving on to public hearing decisions pending. I don't think there are any of them.
Before you move on, Commissioners,
Yep.
we received a request from Thurston Community Media where they would like to have a letter of support from the board. They're applying for a grant, and the grant is for Votes for Women Centennial Grant. And I just want to circle back. The deadline for the submittal of this grant is this Friday.
Of course.
We have a draft letter. So I can work with your assistance on the details of that letter. I just want to make sure if you're okay in supporting this grant.
What is the focus of it?
Is the Thurston Community Media is for Votes for Women Centennial Grant.
What's that mean?
I would assume that this particular grant is to support reaching out to women voters.
Okay. Should I get us new microphones?
Well,
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Gary.
I have no problem with the concept of whatever
Yeah.
you're proposing, but it sounds like we don't know what we're proposing at this point in time. And I know Friday sounds like the date, so do we have a time period between now and Friday that you could put something together, but then give us a briefing?
We have a letter. This is just a letter of support for the grant. So, and this is to, let me read, and again, we just got this.
Yeah, and conceptually, I support it. You can't.
I mean,
not
do we need to
support-
do it now? I mean, do we have
So
another work session?
let me, I don't think we have time for a formal briefing on this, Commissioner, before Friday, sorry. And again, we just received this request yesterday.
Okay.
So celebrate historic and current women in Washington, increase civic engagement for women in Washington, increase public understanding of Washington's role and impact in the national suffrage movement, that's voting, increasing public understanding of where Washington state is today in terms of gender equality, increase public understanding of long-term effects of the suffrage movement, and empowering and advancing women in society. those are the goals of the Centennial Celebration Grant, what I read.
Which begs, oh, wait. You have a comment? All right, well, begs the question. It's noble, it makes sense, but what will TCM do with it? Are they going to do interviews, documentaries, outreach to get out the vote? I don't know what they plan on doing with the grant or the amount of the grant unless I missed that.
So
You said
what
it.
they're planning to do is will include lecture coverage, a series of PSAs, a 30-minute television history special, and a screening on voter registration event. Also will include women's history lecture coverage, to celebrate the centennial, bet before you share, reminder of register, reminder to vote, and I believe they can work in coordination with the auditor's office.
Government, next question. Yeah.
And also they will have a special event on women's voting history and celebration. And also they will include a virtual reality voter registration drive.
I'm happy to sign this.
I'm on board with that easily, yeah.
Okay.
Now they know what they're going to be doing with it, yeah.
So we have a draft letter there, and again, I'm circulating the language with your assistance. Whether we can have a formal signature from you because the timeline is short, we may just include your electronic signature within.
Whatever works.
Yep. Good job. Thank you for
you.
that. Did you know about this?
And I apologize for the short notice on this. We just received that yesterday, so.
Got it, okay.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
Perfect.
That's how the cookie crumbles.
Now, any public hearing decisions pending?
No,
Legislative update.
I'm going to go through this
Yep.
very quickly. And also for your reading pleasures, a more detailed report of that. And as you know, back on Wednesday, April 17, any bills that needed to be voted out for the opposite chamber was the deadline. And some of those survive, and my report will include some of that as well. Senate Bill 5503, that's the modification of the on-site sewer system. The governor signed this bill, and he vetoed Section 3 of this bill. Its staff will, from Public Health and Social Services, will come back to the board in May to give you a briefing as to the impacts and effects of the new law related to our processes on septic systems. The stormwater fees for DOT projects, it passed the Senate, but it appears that it did not pass the House out of committee, so it appears this bill is dead. We talked about House Bill 1497, that's Foundational Public Health, was signed into law. So does the House Bill 1074, that raises to 21 the purchase of tobacco and vaping products. So Senate Bill 5986, that's a tax on vapor and heated tobacco products, has no move out of committee and appears to be dead. Supplement House Bill 1087, that's the trust fund for healthcare employees, passed both chambers and is headed to the governors for signature. The wrongful dead bill, that's substitute Senate Bill 5163, passed both chambers and is moving to the governors for signature. And I think I briefed you in past briefings as to perhaps the impact on this. Please stop me if you have any questions or additional information. Substitute Senate Bill 5380, that the opioid use disorder treatment, passed both chambers and is waiting for the governor's signature. Substitute Senate Bill 5720, the treatment and evaluation of juveniles while in custody, did not pass the House committee, although they passed the Senate, so it appears to be dead. The substitute Senate Bill 5063, the prepaid postage stamps for election ballots, passed both chambers and is waiting the governor's signature. House Bill 1441, the financial for local infrastructure, passed both chambers and is heading to the governors for signature. Substitute Senate Bill 5812, there's the affordable housing, ADUs, Did not pass the committee, the House committee, so it appears that this bill is dead. The House Bill 1406, they impose a local sales tax credited against the sales tax for affordable and supporting housing. It passed the House, and it did not pass the Senate, so it appears to be dead. However, the governor just passed a bill related to use of real estate excise tax as a way to supplement some of the affordable housing, and I'll give you a report to that as we have the opportunity to see how that affects the REIT funding. The substitute House Bill 1667, that's the public records reporting, passed the House, but it did not pass this at the committee at the Senate, so it appears to be dead. House Bill 1743, the prevailing wages, passed both chambers and awaiting governor's signature. And substitute Senate Bill 5272, that the sales tax, 1/10 of 1% for 911, passed both chambers and is waiting the governor's signature. House Bill 1829, the Veterans Assistance Levy, passed the House. It didn't move out of committee in the Senate, but this is necessary to implement the budget, so this continues through the process, I believe.
Can you remind me what the prevailing wage bill is about?
So the prevailing wage was related to last year. It was a legislation passed that included prevailing wages to all the public projects, which included affordable housing and everything else. So this bill fixes
exempts that.
Because it was too expensive, and it was a good legislation with unintended consequences. So this fixes that. And lastly, inaugural on your list is Senate Bill 5597, and this passed into law. And this bill is related to applications of pesticide, aerial applications of herbicides in states. So what this bill does is establishes a legislative work group to develop recommendations for improving the best management practices for aerial applications of pesticides on the state and private forest lands.
Paying attention?
Is that the
Yeah.
Gary
No,
Edwards bill?
I'll just say that I believe that was music to Commissioner Edwards' ears. And also the second part of this bill requires that the legislative group must report its findings and recommendations in a draft legislation to the governor by November 10th, 2019. So that's two things create this group, looking for best management practices, and this group needs to report by November this year on those management practices. That's substitute Senate Bill 5597.
Tell you, Commissioner Edwards, you need to write a book.
I think somebody was listening up.
Yeah, yeah, keyed. All right, anything further on the legal update? Nope, okay. Commissioner items, now we're going to move on to the homeless regional response.
This is an item just to continue to update on some of the efforts that we have, and Keely will come here. She will spend a brief 10 minutes.
Just let me introduce first.
Just to give you a perspective, and maybe at that time, Commissioner Mensah can report on the meeting that you had, I believe, last Friday, and maybe Commissioner Hutchins and myself can report on the follow-up meeting that I have.
Yeah.
And also we'll report on the meeting that I have with City of Olympia staff.
So before we jump into that, Gary, go ahead. You have something to say?
I guess I'd ask, I don't know if the clerk of the board or who does this, but that the information that we've been given for this particular briefing have, I don't know, some, who presented, the date, some other things, because I don't know how we'll find this. If the public is interested in reviewing this, there's no way to retrieve this information.
Oh,
Yeah,
I mean,
that's good feedback.
as opposed to
Good feedback.
a memo type thing? or
Well, I
whatever?
don't know as it has to be so formal, but we do have to, who presented it, out
like
of which
footers,
Yep.
division,
something.
something needs to be on it.
Yep, that's
the
good
public.
feedback.
So
We'll
I don't
make
know
sure.
who can write that on there, but the public that might be interested in this today, I'd like to have them have access to it.
So we'll add that it's coming from Public Health and Social Services, and we add the date. Yeah,
Okay.
good feedback.
Thank you.
All right, go ahead,
Right.
Keely.
Great.
Kaylee Marino, the Homeless Prevention and Affordable Housing Coordinator for the county. So for the last couple weeks, I've been doing a lot of digging into the hot topic of a mitigation site. I presented about a month ago or a couple weeks ago around the 2 different sites we were looking at that are owned by the county, and we landed on the Carpenter Road and Martin Way as a site that has the most promise. So before going into that, one thing to bear in mind around the urgency that we're facing in our community is within the next month, by next week actually, on Wednesday, the 1st of May, the cold weather shelter season will be over. So anywhere between 40 to 100 extra individuals that have been staying in the cold weather beds for the season will no longer have shelter beds. The Salvation Army at that point will also be going into heavy construction for their new project, which means they will not have any shelter beds until August or so, 2019 is what they're projecting. And then we have the Fourth
Is that
Avenue.
about 60 people?
That's 42 beds. And then, for the first phase, that was 42 beds. The Fourth Avenue Bridge, as most people have seen or toured, is growing. I drove past there today, and that site right now has grown since some of the other camps have been swept. And the City of Olympia is managing it by providing them with portable toilets and a dumpster that they are servicing twice, I believe, per week, 2 to 3 times. And that site is being allowed to stay based on basic behavior, essentially, that if they can demonstrate self-governance and keep it clean and whatnot, then it can stay until there's a place for those folks to go, essentially. Yet it's growing, and when the cold weather shelters are closed, then that might be impacted. Our jungle campers, at this point, there's some conversation about the territory, the geography there being meddled with to the point where they might have to be removed, not by the owner, but the owner also just opened his brand new business on that property, and so there's some concern about whether or not that will at some point be closed. So we're looking at several hundred people that are unsheltered in our community and pretty concentrated within Olympia city limits, but it's not limited to Olympia city limits. The Department of Ecology, Wheeler Street, Department of Transportation, there's quite a number of encampments going on right now. We have presented the amendments to the 5-year plan that have been presented to the Homeless Housing Hub and the Housing Action Team around allowing for tiny home villages or mitigation sites, just creative means to address unsheltered folks in our county. Those will be added into the proposed 5-year plan that will be coming before you in August 2019. The middle of this section is just what I've already covered, essentially, when I spoke about Martin Way and Carpenter Road, some of the amenities, some of the benefits that are already associated with that property. But what I discovered was more questions than directives around having a mitigation site. A lot of that around who gets in. So using the coordinated entry system, it's a multi-jurisdictional effort potentially, and so how do we incorporate the coordinated entry system? As you know, the county oversees that system, and we have a mandate to ensure that we have a coordinated entry system within our county. So how do we operationalize that in a multi-jurisdictional effort? Then we have calls to service, so a question around who's responding to those calls to service, as it's a Thurston County property in Lacey UGA. It falls under the jurisdiction of the sheriff's office, but what does that mean in terms of high numbers of calls to service, or we don't know what the calls to service could be, which is directly impacted by the level of supervision and the quality of supervision by a host agency. So we need a really strong agency to spearhead that effort in order to create an environment where escalations are potentially preventable, meaning a reduction in calls to service. The costs, I did receive a draft budget of what it costs to run the City of Olympia's mitigation site. However, it isn't necessarily a reflection of what it would cost the county or whoever to run a mitigation site at Carpenter Road and Martin Way, because down, and I have this listed on here, we have, at that mitigation site, we've got the crisis response unit, walking patrol OPD, familiar faces, the ambassadors, Union Gospel Mission, and a city staff that is stationed at the mitigation site Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Plus, we've got city staff members that are coming frequently to check on the status and just make sure everything's running smoothly. So as those are not elements that are already in place at that site on Carpenter Road and Martin Way, that's another cost that we'd have to consider, much less which agency would be the agency that is overseeing this effort. I've listed some ideas of service providers with just really quick thoughts around who has a lot of infrastructure, who's got financial capacity, who is already doing the work in downtown Olympia, so just for your consideration. Other considerations are a high barrier versus low barrier model. As you know, I'm in the middle of redrafting the 5-year plan, and at the state's guidance for local plans, and from our own 5-year plan that's already been approved by the Board of County Commissioners, or Board of Health, excuse me, in June 2018, is that we have a housing first approach, a low barrier housing first approach for all of the agencies and programs and projects that we fund. So just keeping that in mind. Some suggestions, I think we're at a point where we have to get more direction from elected officials, from the jurisdictions, getting an interlocal agreement on board about what could this look like. It's got tremendous potential to tell an excellent story about our regional response to our unsheltered homeless crisis. We still have some steps between even talking about types of plans or models. I mean, I wrote out a few ideas of what models could look like, and I'm happy to go into, to investigate that more specifically if there's a particular model people would, or anyone would like me to check out. However, one thing I want to continue or to consider is that this is a permanent, temporary solution. We're not going to have permanent supportive housing on board until 2021. So we've got 2 years or more before we have places for these folks to go in terms of permanent supportive housing. So we have to consider that if we put together a mitigation site, it's not a 6-month, most likely not a 6-month endeavor. This is it's become part of our housing continuum. As the number of unsheltered people grows, we have to consider, I don't want to give a false impression that this is a 6-month endeavor. I have printed out, if you're interested, the USICH, which is the United States Interagency Council on Homelessness, in 2015 wrote guidance on how to address homelessness or end homelessness for folks that do live in encampments. And they have specific language at that time around mitigation sites and tent cities, that sort of thing, and a planning checklist for how you address folks living in encampments. It doesn't account for how law enforcement factors into that effort, but it is a pretty handy checklist to kind of start thinking about planning. But it's just one kind of base level look. And I have that if you're curious about it and like to see it.
Before we get into questions for Keely, I just have a point of clarification for us, or for me anyway, on this, what you supplied, and that's number 3.
Yes.
Preliminary consideration of Mottman and Martin Way Carpenter Road as mitigation sites?
Yes.
And it says, I read Mottman is the clear winner.
That's a typo.
Okay.
That's a typo.
Should be Carpenter.
It should be
clear winner,
Carpenter
not
and Martin Way.
Mottman.
Yes.
Okay, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
That just stuck out when I saw
Can I
that.
follow up on that?
No.
No.
Of course you may. Go ahead, please.
Okay. I had that same issue. And what I'm wondering about is, you said earlier that we landed on Martin and Carpenter Way. And how did we come to that particular end result that we landed on? I mean, who made that determination, and based on what?
So I would say that during that conversation, these were thoughts that I plotted down quickly under some, please give me your thoughts about what you're going to be speaking of. Okay. And comparing those two sites, I do not mean to imply that this is a gold, like it's been a stamp of approval, but rather this is, of the two sites, this was the site that looked the most promising.
Does that answer your question or no?
Well, it answers that question, but
Go ahead, keep going, we'll have plenty.
Have we come to the point where we have identified where these people are from? Positively identified where they're from, and if there are warrants for these individuals that are hiding in plain view in our community.
I do not have that data. Getting data on folks in the unsheltered population is pretty tricky. I know there's some efforts going on right now in the unsheltered encampments or unmanaged encampments, but I don't have that data.
I guess just as a follow-up on that question, I would say my concern is that I am more interested in helping our own unfortunate individuals from our own community. I am not interested in enabling others to come from all across the country to come in here to get into some kind of a low barrier situation where they can go up and shoot drugs, get drunk, whatever they want. I want people held accountable. So I'll just make that perfectly clear as to where I'm at on that whole thing. And maybe a follow-up, this kind of goes back to the phase 2 of the UGA, in which counties were never given the tools to deal with these type of situations the same as municipalities were. And that they've got so many more ways to raise funds than we have. And I'm going to go back to my example of the Parks Department. You know, Lacey's got over 50, and I don't even think we have 5. It sounds like I keep getting corrected when I say we have 5 people. That's just an example of how inadequate the county's funding source is. So I don't look at this as the county being able to come up with the solution, mainly because we were never given the tools by the state legislature to deal with municipal type issues, and we don't have the resources that are going to allow us to participate at the same level that the counties are. And then I do have a question about your high barrier, low barrier housing approach. I mean, I don't want to be going towards free injection sites and they get to do whatever they want and we provide housing for them. It's just contrary to my philosophy, and it's contrary to the philosophy of the citizens that I've been talking to. So I just want to kind of put that out there as to where I'm at as an individual commissioner and where I want the priorities to head to. And I do want to hold these people accountable. My idea of helping folks out is the Salvation Army lifestyle, if you will. They're required to participate in their well-being. And there is just, people are going to say, well, what about all these others? Well, there's only so much room in the lifeboat. And the first people I want in that lifeboat are our own unfortunate individuals here locally. So I just...
Okay. Go ahead.
Well, my response to that is that I view the mitigation site as a lot different than, you know, a tiny house or a shelter. This is a, let's get real with what we're talking about here. This is a tent on a pallet on an asphalt, you know, lot.
Right.
So my concerns about I'm not unconcerned about everything Commissioner Edwards said. If we were talking about actual housing, I don't consider this housing. I consider this basic, like, mitigation is a weird word to put on this very human concept. But this is just like trying to create just an absolute minimum level of human decency in our community. You know, so when we're talking about the mitigation side and what the rules and barriers ought to be, I have a very different point of view. And you know, when it comes, criminal backgrounds keep coming up. You know, criminal background checks, that is not the best practice for trying to get people off the street. We allow, you know, people have served their sentence, they've done what they need to do, and we continue to allow legalized discrimination against them in employment, in housing. We are talking about a tent on a pallet on an asphalt lot. And we're saying that someone with a criminal record is so excommunicated from our community that we're gonna not even allow them to have that level of, you know, of decency. I think we need to talk with Olympia. I know you're doing that, and I thank you for that, because they've managed this issue. It's a tricky issue, and I'm not sitting here saying I have the answers, but Olympia has been, with trial and error, working through how they deal with the criminal background issues and the warrants issues. versus balancing that against, trying to help people that are in true need. So I think we need to work with them, what's working for them, what's not working. I'm very flexible in how we do that, but I want to make sure that we're just understanding what we're talking about here. We're not, and I understand this isn't free and we're going to spend money toward this. So I get that, but at the same time, we have to understand that this is not even, if you take that Boise case, they talked about inside space versus outside. We're not even meeting that level of, this is just basic human, like trying to keep the community safe, keep these folks safe, helping our downtown businesses and helping our other members of the community that are maybe scared or don't, the situation seems out of control to them. So I think it's not just helping people from out of the region or people who are using drugs. It's helping all of us to have a more managed approach to this issue. And this mitigation site, I think, is just a fundamental first baby step towards, not a baby step, it's an important step, but we're not talking about spending hundreds of thousands of dollars on a tiny home village or permanent supportive housing, which is what the community really needs. And those are going to be more difficult conversations about all the issues that Commissioner Edwards talked about, and I'm with him on that. But I really think we need to focus on this mitigation site. I like the next steps section you have here, because we're going to have to get these things rolling. These things just take glacial amounts of time when we're talking about property and interjurisdictional cooperation, but those are the two things that we really need to get going here.
Before I get back to you, Gary, we've been dealing at least I've been dealing for the last couple of years with mitigation sites, but it's mitigating for a gopher, it's mitigating for a rodent.
Oh.
So to mitigate for human beings is kind of a different concept. I understand you have to mitigate, I understand that concept, but mitigating for human beings is, it almost takes the compassion out of it. And so it's like putting up with and dealing with, and how do you account for it? It has to be done. And as Commissioner Edwards says, it's not up to the county to fix. We're not going to fix it. I'm not lofty enough to believe that we're going to fix it.
Right.
But it's up to us as a community to help further the issue for not only the individual but for the community. So it's up to all of us to fix it, not up to us to fix it, because we just don't have the resources and such. I'm gravely concerned about what's happening in King County now with HIV outbreak in their camps, let alone HEP and all the other junk that comes with that. And as a Board of Health, it's a huge concern of mine, because I don't want that happening down here. So some of the issues that we'll talk about are meetings that we've had. And I had a meeting last week with Mayor Cheryl Selby of Olympia, and we talked about this extensively. And we're both of the same mind that something needs to be done. We can't do it alone. We all need help. And where are we going to go with this? We talked about budgeting at a big level, because it has to be. Everybody has to pay something. And I say everybody, I'm talking about the jurisdictions collectively. What's the formula? Don't know. But we have to collectively come up with a pool of money. What's the oversight going to look like? How do you define that? And oversight, is it on-site? Is it faith-based? And I'm in between testing you, Keeley, for DNA and running you through a National Crime and Information Center, and just everybody can be John Hutchings. Doesn't matter who you are, you don't have to prove it. I'm in between. I think one's too far and one's too far. So I want it reasonable. I know the sheriff's going to weigh in on this. We will eventually vote on this and sign something, but the sheriff's got a grave concern as well. But I'm in between on reducing the barrier, but making it so tough that that it's a huge, unreasonable barrier. And I'm not suggesting anybody here is unreasonable, but I'm concerned about the safety as such as well. Another issue is the Boise case with vehicles. I know some jurisdictions would love to have some type of a vehicle component on a mitigated site. And where I am is I'm not there because it provides anonymity and constitutional protections for the individual in a vehicle that I'm not comfortable with, as opposed to or with the people in tents or tiny homes and such. And I'm more concerned not with their privacy, but it is with all the hazmat stuff, radiator leakage, fluid, oil, all the other junk that comes with that. and how we can pay for the amenities, and then, of course, as you suggested, what is the exit plan? Not exit, we're shutting it down, the problem is solved, but what is the exit to get these folks out and upward? Especially at the point now where, would you say, with Salvation Army going construction, with the cold weather shutting down next month, and we're going to have an influx of folks coming into the community wherever they come from, and they're going to flood right in between the people we're moving out, they're going to flood right back in. It's just a constant flow. And how do we account for that? How do we help ease that burden? And so those are my concerns at a very high policy level, because everybody else will do the details. So the next step is going to be, of course, our meetings that we had before I get to you, Gary, the meetings that we had. Go ahead, Romero.
I think Commissioner Edwards, like.
You want to jump in real quick?
Yeah, I'll just add a couple things just for clarification. My concern is not their criminal background. My concern is if they've paid their debt to society, that is one thing. But sex offenders that are registered are not falling in that category. And the last thing I want to happen is for some child to be abducted by somebody from one of these camps. And so I am very worried about identifying those folks through a background check and holding them accountable, taking appropriate action when possible. And one of those things would be warrants, serving warrants from wherever they might be to get them cleared out of our community. I make no bones about it. I am more interested in discouraging outsiders from coming here than I'm much more in favor of that than encouraging outsiders from coming here. And the sheriff's office, I've had a good discussion with them. They don't feel they have the resources to take any of this on in the unincorporated area. And I know there's been discussion about the may or shall as far as backgrounds and warrants and all of that type of thing. But I think that falls right back into we can either discourage or we can encourage. I want to help those folks from here. I do not want to encourage people to come here from other areas. And I can't be any more plain than that, because we're never going to have the resources to deal with all of them. And the more we allow these people to participate in their deviant behavior here with no social oversight, if you will, the more people are going to be coming. Yeah.
Okay.
We've got a problem coming on our hands, and we do need to address it.
You made that real clear. We've got a full agenda. I want to keep going on
Okay.
this issue. There's more to talk about with our meetings.
So from the administrative point of view, as all of you stated, this is a complex issue. And at least from my point of view is making sure that we have all the instruments in place, that we have a way to move forward. And really, before we can, you and the rest of the jurisdictions decide whether it's a tent or tiny homes and everything else, it has to be in a local agreement that all the cities will have to sign it. And in the local agreement needs to determine who is going to pay for what and who is going to provide the services. Because I don't believe the county should be in the position to hold the bag in a way, that's quote unquote, to address the issue, because if it's this regional mitigation side, however it's going to be, it has to be a regional response where all the jurisdictions need to be part of that. So the in-local agreement it has to be essential for all the jurisdictions to participate financially, to participate operationally, and to participate in response to law enforcement if that is the case. So that is probably from my point of view as to what the next step needs to happen. Because with all due respect, absent an in-local agreement, I don't think we can have this property be available for a mitigation site, whatever that is, because it will be very difficult to come up with an agreement after that property becomes available for a regional mitigation site. So that is the next steps that, at least from my point of view, we need to start working on that in a local agreement. The older jurisdictions need to sign it.
Okay. Nathan?
Well, just the top 3 steps here on Keely's list kind of dovetails with what Ramiro just said, and the number 3 is clear direction for staff to move forward on implementation. I give it, so I hope that we can do that. And if the first step is working on the interlocal agreement, great. If the
And that-
first step is creating the regional forum, perfect. Let's go.
And that is the direction I believe that we receive from the board, is just to start working on the details as to the viability and feasibility of this site to become a regional mitigation site. So,
Do we have others? I think I asked this a while back. Do we have other sites that are kind of pending? Not yet?
Not yet, no.
Okay. Well, baby steps.
Yeah,
Okay.
all right.
Thank you, Katie.
Thank you.
Anything else on this topic? Okay, so we're waiting for
This
progression.
is an update. We'll continue to bring information as it develops.
Okay.
And you do have a public hearing on May 7th. Will you be considering public testimony before you approve this emergency ordinance on land use?
Okay.
That's going to be to allow homeless encampment.
Yeah, yeah.
And we're going to approve that ordinance without a memorandum of understanding with these jurisdictions?
Oh, well, you just allow that to happen. So you're not approving anything specifically. You just allow within.
Well,
the
there's
code.
some verbiage in there on that ordinance that I'm questioning, so.
Well, if you have any comments on
Okay.
that ordinance, please let us
Okay.
know.
Yeah.
Because we are not going to be presenting an ordinance that you don't feel comfortable. That's part of the process.
Okay.
As you hear public testimony to change some of the language of the ordinance is also within your purview as to how you would like to see that ordinance put in place.
Thank you.
That's May 7 at the agenda setting?
No, it's a public hearing.
Oh, there it is. I see it. Towards the little skinny blue line. Okay. Got it. Thank you.
So we're having a check-in on Thursday. Is that a time that I could report on? Because we're running, I mean, I could report for 10 or 15 minutes on my meeting with that you asked me to
Yeah,
happen last week.
I have there
I could
should be
discuss that
some.
on Thursday
yeah,
instead.
Should be some time, and also at that point, maybe Commissioner Hutchins could report as well on the meetings that we had with.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Good. Okay, good.
And Keely, I'd like to, if you could be at that, or else I could meet with you separately to let you know what was discussed. It would be pertinent, I think, to what you're working on.
And that's Thursday at 10 a.m.?
Yeah.
Okay. Number 2, Summit Lake SPU. Thank you, PHSS.
Good morning, Commissioners.
Commissioner,
morning.
this is a follow-up to the request that you received from citizens to create a special use district that will be SUD on the area of Summit Lake. You held the public hearing on April the 2nd, and there was a very well-attended testimony. So Tim Wilson is going to walk you through in a very concise way as to what you heard, both in receiving written testimony as well as oral testimony. And then at that point, we'll like to ask for your direction. And the direction that you will have before you, the formal decision will be next Tuesday, is whether you would like to allow the process to continue. And the process to continue will be to allow the citizens to vote, those affected by the district, whether they'd like to form a special use district or not. Your decision is not to create a special use district. The decision before you, again, is to allow the process to continue. So,
Good morning, and apologies for getting ahead of myself there. I am here today to give you an update and summarize the results of the public hearing that was held on April 2nd, 2019. Again, the purpose of the hearing was to hear comments on whether the board should put the question of forming a Summit Lake Special Use District to a vote. I would want to call out, I think you have a memo in front of you along with some other documentations. I'd like to point out a typo in that memo, and those numbers should be reversed. So 94 comments were received regarding the topic. 36 of those comments were in favor, and 58 of those comments were opposed to putting the question to a vote. So as Ramiro mentioned, the next step in the process would be to either put a resolution forward to the auditor's office asking them to place this item on the ballot for August. In order to do that, I'm told by the auditor's office that that resolution needs to be received no later than May 10th. The other option would be to reject the petition and stop the process at this point.
Okay. All right, any questions or comments?
No? Yes. Tim, could you explain the taxation part of this? And where I'm going with this is, it looks to me by the RCW that there's taxation without representation on those individuals that own property but might be registered to vote in some other area, like Grays Harbor or Pierce or something like that. So could you explain how that works? And does each property get one vote? Does each property get, depending on the number of voters that are assigned to that property? I mean, there could be co-owners and such. So I'm kind of concerned about how that plays out.
I can try. The registered, per RCW, the registered owners of that property that are registered voters of the district in question. So if they are residents and registered to vote within that district or within that area, each get 2 votes per parcel. So each parcel gets 2 votes, if you will. So if it's a single owner of that property, there's 2 votes. If it's a husband and wife, they each get a vote for that parcel. Or if there's co-owners of that property, they each get a vote. And that's strictly per RCW.
But
I think your question is if a property owner who is not registered to vote in the county in a property,
that's right.
that individual will not have a voice, right?
That's where I'm going, yes.
So, but it's no any different than any voting across the county where a registered voter, perhaps I'll say, if I own property in Oregon, if I'm not registered to vote in Oregon, then somebody else, the voters of that, will make decisions on my property. And so it's the same scenario that we have in here is how the registered voters are applied to here, the state, and perhaps across the country. So that is really doesn't change in a way.
Yes, you're right. My issue is the number of individual property owners that do not live in that area, where in most cases, most of your property owners are probably registered voters if you live in Olympia or Lacey or wherever you live. In this case, it looks like the vast majority of owners are not registered to vote in Thurston County. And I wonder if you know the answer to that.
I do have the numbers to the number of structures that are on the parcels. I do not have the number of registered voters within.
Do you have just with structures? Do you have that in front of you?
That was provided at the public hearing. I don't have it in front of me now.
Okay. Would you know how many structures there are, lots with structures on them, versus lots that are bare lots, I guess, that are affected by this particular district?
I have that number back in my office. I don't have that number here today. And again, that was provided at the public hearing.
Okay. I want to relay just a quick story of government. and how it might work. Because we went through, when I say we, residents of Lawrence Lake went through something very similar. Although it became a lake management district rather than a special use district. And on that situation, owners were allowed to vote regardless of where they were registered to vote. If you were an owner of a property, you got to vote. So my concern is we have a voting block that's a considerable block that's not going to be represented. And those that live there are going to get an unfair say, if you will, if they live there and registered there. So that's my concern. What happened out at Lawrence Lake was the government came along and said, you have all this algae problem because you've got failing septic systems around the lake. The members of that community got together and said, well, gee, we don't see that. How can we figure this out? Because it was a maybe. And so a lake management district was created. It was voted on by the public, and they voted to create this lake management district. An engineering firm was then hired to go out and find out what the problem was. In the end, where the government had said it's because you've got these failing systems, we found that it was not failing systems at all. It was a little bit to do with lawn fertilizer usage too close to the water. The major problem was that that particular lake had been used as a holding pond for the Olympia Power Company back in the early 1920s. And the river was flowing through the lake at that point in time, and the lake was dammed up. Along with that damming up came a lot of silt buildup. Prior to that, there'd been logging interests on that lake, and the logging mill work and such was all pushed out into the lake. And then you had an excessive deposit of organic material. Anyway, we're still working on our lake, cleaning it up, Lawrence Lake. But what I'm getting at, there was misinformation given to the lake owners initially, who then took it upon themselves to create a lake management district and kind of got to the truth of the matter. Here we've got a situation where the citizens up there are told that they've got this problem because of septic issues is one of the issues. And I don't know that it's true or not. The scientists don't know if it's true or not. They've determined that they do not know what causes this toxic algae bloom. So I'm concerned we're going to create another bureaucratic nightmare of taxation for citizens without adequate representation. And I don't think it's the right format to pursue. I think everybody ought to get to vote if we're going to impose taxation on folks. I don't know what the real difference is. Part of that difference is a lake management district ends up with a little supervision from the county, I believe, versus the district as proposed, a special use district, is pretty much exclusively ran by the citizen members. And then we've got all the issues that were brought up about the testing of the water, and I don't know, I could go on and on and on. I'm not sure this is the format to do that. So I am not in favor of creating another bureaucratic nightmare without more information. I just don't think that there's a rush. Here again, I feel government is rushing into this without providing citizens with adequate, truthful information. So that's kind of where I'm at.
All right, and never wanting to take away or demean or diminish what you have to say, because it's always valid and important. My view is, number one, I have some questions for you. They're yes or no. We, the county, are not creating a taxation system. This is voter initiated. This is citizen initiated, correct?
That's correct.
Per RCW, per law.
Correct.
This is their prerogative. They initiate this. And we are voting yes or no on having the process go forward to a ballot to let the citizens vote on whether they want to tax themselves or not. Not us, but them, correct?
Correct.
And there are positive and negative consequences for every decision we make. You want to do well on a test, you study. It's a positive consequence. You don't don't study for a test, negative consequences. And so if someone chooses to not register to vote wherever they live or don't live, that's not up to me to decide. That's up to them to make that value judgment where they want to register to vote. And I don't know if they have time to register to vote for this and then change it. That's not my issue. It's not my problem. That's their decision, their choice. And so again, this is citizen initiated. We're voting to move the process forward to let the citizens decide. Government's not getting in their way. We're not creating this for them. We're just allowing them to vote. Am I right?
Yep, that is
Okay.
correct.
So what do we need now at this point?
So,
Do you need anything more to say?
I'm sorry.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I disagree that it's government rushing in. It's the citizens that came to us. It's democracy. It's the exact opposite of that. And it's not fair to the residents of Summit Lake who rely on that lake for water that people can come in and invest or make it a vacation home and block their ability to exercise the democratic process. Residents of Summer Lake can't control how many people come in and just buy property and don't care enough or aren't invested enough in that community to be registered to vote there. And again, it's okay for people to own property in other places, but you don't have the same rights of democratic access, and that's the system. It can't be different. And there's a history of water quality problems here. It's still ongoing to this very day. There were a lot of good arguments on both sides for whether the special use district is the right approach. I don't really know, frankly, but that's a conversation this community needs to have and deserves to have, and through this process that's set up. And I feel it would be irresponsible of me to say from my perch up here that they don't get to have that conversation and that process and decide for themselves.
Well, that would be government interference.
Exactly.
We're not going to allow you to represent yourself as the
That
law
would be
says you
overreaching
can.
by government.
Yeah.
So for your agenda next week.
Do you have a 30-second, something you want to wrap up in 30 seconds? Because we
Yes,
still have
yes,
a
I do.
full agenda.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I still feel that this is a small group of voters that get the opportunity to vote on this. If they went towards a lake management district, every property owner then gets a vote. So that's a mechanism that is also in place. I feel this was a strategy by a very few number of residents up there, and I think it was 10 that came forward. And the law requires 10, and there was 15 or something like that
That's
to
the
come
minimum.
forward with that issue. And I think it was a ploy to kind of outsmart the process. And if we allowed them to take a different vote, do you want to move forward with a lake management district, which encumbers us to help them? And that was one of the main themes brought out by taxpayers, that they didn't feel the county was active enough in helping them. I want to be an active participant in helping the citizens up there. And I think the Lake Management District is a much better way to go than the way that we're proposing to allow this to happen. I just feel the voters are getting two bad choices, again, without adequate information.
Okay, go ahead. Oh, now we got Robin.
Was there not also a survey done by the group that is putting this proposal forward of the residents around the lake that had a heavily favorable response?
That is correct. There was a survey.
Right. I don't see that in your report to the board.
No.
Well, the other thing is that most of the arguments against said, well, the county already has a septic plan that will help us. But the commission defunded that plan. So if we want to talk about spending money to implement the septic plan to help Summit Lake, I'm willing to have that conversation. But because the county commission wouldn't fund its own septic plan, the citizens have a right to look at other options. And one of their other options is this district. And I'm not going to interfere in that process.
Can you do it quickly, though, Gary?
I need to clarify that the reason the prior board defunded that was because it was based on false information that the community was given, that there were 14% failing septic tanks throughout the county. It was just not true. 14% times 7 years means everybody's septic tank fails within that period of time. Just not true. There were areas where there were problems, and that could have added up to 14%. That's along the shoreline where the old 29 Ford maybe was buried between the cabin and the water. That's why that portion of that ordinance was not kept in place, was because it was based on deceitful information given by county staff.
You yourself said that septics were an identified issue at Summit Lake. So that community would be benefit from implementation of that plan.
That they could be the issue.
Okay.
I am not arguing that they're not the issue. I'm saying this is the wrong process to use to come to that conclusion, because the government is not going to be involved at all in this particular formation. I feel the citizens of Summit Lake wanted more involvement from the county to help them. The only way we can be involved in any way is to create a lake management district, which again is up to the individual property owners that all get a say in the process. In this one, the majority of the property owners do not get a say, and I feel that's unfair.
Okay, we got to get on with Romero now.
So the state law allows for any citizen to exercise the options they have available to them, and the request that you receive is for you to consider allowing the process to move forward on the special use district. You held a public hearing, which is required by law, and as a result of the public hearing, the next step is for your decision, of the board decision, whether we like to allow to continue with the process for the citizens to vote on the creation of the special use district. So what I'd like for the board today is whether you would like to include that item on next week's agenda, board agenda. I'm not asking you to vote on that because you will exercise your vote next Tuesday. But I'd like for you to have direction whether you'd like to keep that item on next week's board agenda for you to exercise your vote.
All right, so you need thumbs up or
Yep.
down?
Thumbs up. Yep. Okay, the majority of the board. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Tim. Yeah, thank you very much. Solid waste, RFP.
Yeah.
This will be interesting.
And this is just to give you an update on the timeline we need to follow related to the issuance of the request for proposals for the solid waste. And the staff is going to walk you through as to the next steps, give you a timeline. And at this point, there is not really a direction we're seeking for the board. This is just informational, and we'll keep you up to date as we progress with the implementation of this timeline. And it's included in here. It looks like this.
All right.
Jennifer Walker, Public Works Director. Do you all have a copy?
Yep.
Okay. So this was a draft schedule that we put together. It's been adjusted some, and there are a few notes on the bottom. The one specific one where this schedule is dependent upon the solid waste manager coming back into Public Works and acting as the solid waste manager. So I just want to throw that out there.
What?
The first item is an issue for request for information. So this is an opportunity to communicate information to prospective vendors about the facility and what our plan is for requesting proposals later on in the year. It gives those potential vendors an opportunity to find out more information about the site in a coordinated effort, coordinated way. And so we are proposing to issue that RFI in June of this year. And then during that time frame, also be working on the draft request for proposal that we'll put out. Did you have a question?
Oh, I have questions,
Oh.
but not until you're done with the
Okay.
presentation.
Okay. And then
As we're working through that, the deadline for RFI responses will be in July, so that's about a month. We'll issue or present the draft request for proposal to the board in an executive session. This gives you an opportunity to see what we have established as the criteria for evaluation and give you an opportunity to have some feedback into that process. We have a couple of contracts that are expiring next May. Given the timeline and the level of effort that this process takes, we will be coming back to the board and requesting consideration for extending those contracts. The timeline for the extension of those contracts will be dependent upon where we are in this process. The deadline for the request for proposals, so for those potential vendors who are interested in becoming a vendor and managing those facilities, is February of next year. We'll then have a team that's already been established that will do the evaluation of those proposals, and we will come back to the board and present that evaluation and who was identified as the top vendor, and that'll be in an executive session. And then we will begin working on drafting the contract and entering into negotiations for that contract, and come back to the board for a request for authorization for finalizing the contract. Once that contract is finalized, there is going to be a period of time for the implementation of that plan. And so when a vendor comes on board, they have a long lead time to get ready for the operations in terms of equipment and how they will get staffing and manage that facility. So at this time, that is our proposed schedule.
All right, go. Done?
No.
You done?
Ready?
Quick, yeah.
I keep hearing from the SWAC group about something about we're supposed to wait until Cowlitz County does something. So what is that all about? What are they referring to? What's going on down there in the Alina solid waste?
I'm going to have the solid waste manager respond to that.
Cowlitz County has...
Monica Gorman, everybody.
Yes, I'm sorry.
It's all right.
Monica Gorman, Thurston County Solid Waste Manager. Cowlitz County has a landfill that their Department of Public Works operates. At some point in the past, the commissioners decided to look into potentially either selling that landfill or contracting its operation to a third party. There were ongoing discussions with a vendor that they selected, Republic, and those discussions ended, I believe, in November of last year. So the last I heard, as of November, the discussions to either contract that or sell that have stopped, and the commissioners have decided to let Public Works, their internal Public Works, continue to operate that landfill. Our contracts, in my opinion, should not rely on the actions of another county and what they do with their landfill. Right now, that's a public landfill, and it's not available for our use.
Okay,
I have just a little more information that helps, is that because this was presented at my WASDAC training, because one of the Cowlitz commissioners presented this, and just a little, what Monica said is accurate based on my understanding, but it was also that they discontinued those conversations. They gave their staff, but they've set a deadline, I think of June 2020 or 2021, I might have that wrong, but they've given themselves a little time to figure out if they can manage it properly. It's not working the way they're doing it with their own staff. And so I think what I've heard from the SWAC folks is that there is this timeline where they're going to revisit that decision of whether to contract it out or sell it. And if they did that, it could influence the landscape.
And I guess my follow-up to that was going to be, and And so what benefit was there going to be to Thurston County by waiting until Cowlitz did something? Or maybe the proposed benefit or potential benefit? I don't know. Okay, anybody can answer, I'm just curious.
Way cheaper if
And that
it's-
is the million-dollar question in a way, because there perhaps maybe, and you receive public testimony from some of the SWAC members, there perhaps may be a financial benefit to the county if we wait. If we wait to the unknown, and we have an obligation to proceed and do the best possible contract procurement process that we have to do, because it's not just about the disposal, it's not just about the end of the journey. As to where, because the contracts that we need to go with the RFP is the collection, the processing, and the disposal and transportation. It is the whole contracts that we need to do. If there is a perceived savings on the college, which we don't know if that will materialize or not, because it has to go through a formal bidding process, we cannot get to the point and say, now we want to go and dispose our solid waste at the Cowlitz County. That's the unknown. So do we really, as a county, do we want to wait 2 years to see what happens with the Cowlitz County when it's just one item of our solid waste process that we need to address? And that is, from the administrative point of view, that's my biggest concern, is depending on the actions of a different county, they may or may not occur, and then how the purchasing of that site will be, which is going to take yet another year or two to negotiate, because it's not going to be a 2020, the deadline that Public Works can be effective in managing the landfill, and then another year in terms of negotiate with a vendor, whether it's Republic or any other vendor. And then for us to predicate and wait until those 3-4 years to wait what happens with Cowlitz County in order for us to address the larger umbrella of the needs of our solid waste, from my point of view, I don't think that's a reasonable approach.
Okay.
But the answer to your question is, it's a lot, if you could ship your stuff to Cowlitz and not Goldendale or Oregon, you could potentially save a lot of money on that transportation, which is a big piece of the whole puzzle. It's not the only piece, as these guys point out.
And I guess considering that, which I haven't seen this, I've only heard about it, apparently where it goes to Eastern Washington, they have electrical production that develops from the gas that comes out and is captured, and then they run steam turbines or something. And I've been told that Thurston County is too small of a fish to do it on their own. So my other concern, if you will, do we ever think about doing things regionally to where maybe we could consolidate with Pierce, with Mason, Lewis? I don't know what it would take to put something together, but we keep hearing about solid waste as a big issue in the future for government entities to deal with. I would like to explore the possibility. I know this isn't the time or the format to do it right now, but I'd like to explore those possibilities. Could we work with other jurisdictions rather than doing something standalone? Almost like we do when we buy fleet vehicles. Oftentimes, we'll buy fleet vehicles in conjunction with others. All I'm looking for is maybe some efficiencies, but not today.
And the only question I had has been answered in your footnote. The length of time for an extension will be determined at the time of the request. So I've got that. Will we go ahead and close this down and frame it? Or is this just information we're done?
This is just information for you, and we'll continue to update you as we move forward on the RFP process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the chair prerogative, we need to get this procurement thing piece done, but I'd like to put the other items off because we have an executive session we got to get to, and it's 4 minutes to noon.
And I hope our attorneys are here, because you
Good.
need
Thank you.
attorneys.
Thanks, Jennifer. Thank you, Monica. Okay, go on with the procurement. Let's bang that out.
Hopefully it can go quickly, because I do apologize for putting a very complicated policy before you and asking you to approve it on the same day. I will quickly try to hit the major changes in this policy. The reason that we are asking you to move quickly is because we are now required by federal law change. They require our purchasing policies to have references to federal
Page, you're talking about pages of this memo?
Pages of this, right. So that's the information that we had to add. Ariana Lawson, our former grants manager, added this. It was the last thing she did before she left the county for her
Okay.
new lawyer.
So we
Thank
can't
you.
fire her if she messed it all
Thank
up.
Yeah.
you. Section F, brand new federal policy. And it's what the state auditors in part are looking for. Since we had the policy open, we took the opportunity to also align our purchasing policy to revised federal law. This policy was last revised in 2014. Since that time, not federal law, state laws. State laws have changed. And the biggest change is that they increased the dollar thresholds that require competitive bids. So if you look on the table on the last two pages, so it's the table on the second to the last page, those dollars are now aligned to state policy. And it used to be that anything under $5,000 could be contracted, a purchase for good service or public work. You could go out for anything less than $5,000 with no competition, $5,000 to $25,000. You had to get 3 quotes, but no formal advertising, or you had to work off the small works roster. And anything over $25,000 had to go out to bid. Competitive bidding, formal process for public work, more like an RFQ or RFP for things that were not public works. We have now aligned these dollar amounts to state and federal laws, which is why it gets a little complicated. And I see the print is small, but now for a public work, there is no bid required if you're using federal money for projects under $3,500. So it's a little less. And if it's subject to the Davis-Bacon Act, it's anything under $2,000. Small purchases, which include working off a small works roster and getting quotes, is $3,500 to $150,000 with federal money. And then sealed formal bids is anything over $150,000 with federal money. If you're using non-federal money, I know it's complicated, under $40,000 does not require quotes. From 40 to 299, or just 300,000, requires getting 3 quotes but not formal bids, and over 300,000 is formal bids. Purchases of other items, not a public work, under federal money, the prices are listed here. Non-federal money, again, the amounts are listed here. This is all aligned with federal and state laws. And really what happens is the person who is buying something or running a contract has to know what the rules are, has to know how their items are being paid for. So we have a communication plan. We're also standing up training very soon around the procurement policy so that we know people who are doing these things know what they're supposed to do. And I see you have questions.
Oh, hang on. I'm going to go Ty first. Keep it balanced here.
Not surprised this employee left.
Ariana, she's doing more than grants.
Do you have anything about this? Though?
I think that I'll just listen to your questions.
Go ahead.
Oh, okay. We're talking about the same item
Yeah.
here that we're talking about for today's meeting at
Yes.
2, item number
Yes.
8A, right?
Correct.
Okay. And we're going to be expected that we're going to digest this whole thing and understand it, which I don't think we are, but we're going to make an action so we become compliant with something.
Federal law.
And so at this point, rather than getting into any more discussion, I am going to look to the county manager because we pay him a lot to make good decisions for us, and I want to see a thumbs up or thumbs down if you want to move forward with this, so we can get on with doing business.
I wouldn't be bringing this item to your consideration if it has not been vetted.
Okay, and you're content.
And I believe this is ought to be done.
Okay.
Needs to be done as alignment and also provide flexibility in delivering the services. Because in this case, you see some of the requests that you've received just to approve to go out to bid. In past conversations we had, there's an opportunity to streamline that process. And I believe this procurement process does that.
I'm good. Let's do it.
It's all been approved by legal. They had a thorough review. It went through an extensive review process with representatives from other offices and departments. We're trying to.
And so if you can't get our physical signatures, you'll electronically sign it and get it done by Friday. Yes?
Be done today.
Oh, today, okay.
Yeah.
Good, deadline's Friday, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, it absolutely
Got
has
it.
to be done.
Anything
by
further?
Friday.
No.
Nope.
If you folks are still watching at home, thanks for tuning in. We're going to go into an executive session now, and Commissioner action may follow. Don't know. Thank you. Mic's off, please.